Welcome to my channel. Here, I don't just speak, but I invite you to think. Throughout my videos, I've questioned the deepest held beliefs, from philosophy, the dynamics of religion and faith, to personal identity. I ventured into the controversial because I know that only in honest, critical confrontation do we grow. My voice is a search for truth, unafraid of what is difficult. If you join this community today, you don't just watch, but you engage. Together, we open the door to a courageous dialogue, one that transforms us. Subscribe, share, and let's keep questioning, growing, and seeking truth together. Well, hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be bringing today's show to you. This is we're going to be talking about some things that are extremely important, some things that I care very much about. Before I do that, I just want to mention a couple of things really quickly because I think it's important to kind of preface today's show. As you guys know, most of you anyway, the reason I started my channel is not because I want to be some kind of famous YouTuber. I'm not looking to get monetized and make money off this project. I'm doing it because I have a message that I'm trying to share with you guys and with the world. I used to have a lot of conversations on other social media platforms about how to improve your life, how to extract the most value out of life, how to live a good life, and how to be a better person, how to make the world a better place. And people would ask me, they're like, Objective Ethics or Daniel, do you really think, I mean, the world is so fucked up. Do you really think that you can actually make a difference? And I tell them, me by myself, no, what difference can I make? But together we can make the world a better place. And I want to show you guys this just really quickly because this is exactly what I'm talking about here. I came home from work the other day and I was blown away when I opened up my YouTube to maybe watch a video while I was having dinner. And I saw this was on my screen. It says, "Is self-respect the key to a better world?" And I was so excited when I saw that because this is the message, as you have all heard me say so many times, this is the key to living this better life, to extracting the most value out of the life you have. Self-respect, right? You don't get self-respect unless you respect the planet. That's your environment that you live in. And if you can't respect other people, and that goes for all other people, if you could do those things, you can attain true self-respect. And that's the thing, that the necessary precondition for living the good life that every single person wants to live. I saw this pop up. This is a video that was done on Architects of Humanity website. This gentleman interviewed me, about a week or so ago. His name's Maxed Out. I'll put a link to his channel in the description of this video. I highly recommend that you watch his video. This video, and this is not to pat myself on the back here. This is to show you guys the type of positive impact that a community of people, like-minded people, can have about this self-respect, okay? The power of putting your voice out there and talking about something you believe in, trying to make a positive difference. So Max had interviewed me about a week or so ago, and I talked about this self-respect concept that I talk about here. It inspired him so much that he did his own show on it, 5-hour stream talking about this almost entirely the whole time. And Max had some incredible things to say himself, his own input of what he added to the conversation, not my words, his words, what it inspired in him. It's like you put a seed in the ground and a beautiful flower grows out of it. And that's what this conversation really was to me. And the reason I'm showing you guys this is because this is what we're going to do today, I'm hoping. There are some things that I believe very strongly about the condition that the world is in right now. And I'm going to say some things that are probably going to cause me to lose some subscribers. Some things that need to be said about life, death, and we're just going to get right into it, actually. I'm very, very proud today to bring you my guest speaker. This is Jay Charles. He goes by LA online. He's the author of the book that we're going to be talking about a little bit today. And I call him LA because he goes by Life Abolitionist online. So you'll probably hear me say LA quite a bit. He wrote this very interesting book. It's regarding antinatalism is the topic, and it's something we're going to get into today. He has a different take on it. And I don't want to spoil too much of the conversation beforehand. And I'm going to let Mr. Mr. Charles introduce himself to you, but I'm just going to read really quickly from the back of this book to get an idea of who we're talking with today. With both a JD and MPA, J. Charles brings an analytical perspective to a profoundly personal subject matter. As a radical anarchist who rejects hierarchical constructs and an antinatalist, he advocates for the right to self-ownership. In Jay's own words, you do not own your life. This book proves it. The disposable rights test is simple. Can you legally exit your existence peacefully? No. The state prohibits autonomous disposal while extracting value through taxes and forced labor. You are enslaved. Your parents committed the original breach by imposing existence without consent. You bear over 5.96 million in lifetime costs. You receive zero restitution. Whose life is it anyway? That's the name of the book. Synthesizes antinatalism, anarchism, and socialism into life abolitionism, a framework for ending life slavery through 5 fronts of resistance: legislative action forcing impossible choices, constitutional challenges exposing judicial complicity, civil disobedience disrupting extraction, asylum claims creating international precedent, cultural transformation delegitimizing procreation. The state must either recognize your right to exist or provide full material support for its living property. It will refuse both, exposing complete illegitimacy. Slavery, once exposed as slavery, requires abolition. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I want to introduce Mr. J. Charles to you. Go ahead, Jay. Why don't you take the stage and just introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, I created this book just because of years of frustration, and I actually went back to my Facebook account probably about 10 years ago, and I just realized that a lot of things that I'm saying now, I was saying 10 years ago. I just had to put it all together. I have evolved. I think I've always been an anti-natalist. I was against procreation probably since about the age of 13, just because of what the Bible says about the end times and reading the book of Job and Jeremiah. But I sort of evolved. I was a classical liberal. I was a libertarian. And then I eventually became an anarchist, because that is the only consistent philosophical position for anyone who believes in consent. And then I just had to put a framework together of what I call life abolitionism, which is a synergy of antinatalism, elective pro-mortalism, anarchy, and socialism. So it is a comprehensive framework to try to liberate us, to try to champion for the position of self-ownership, the right to self-ownership. And I have 2 versions of my book, Whose Life Is It? The More Death for Life Enslavement, but I also have a basically like a Cliff Notes version of it for those who don't want to read the whole 414 pages. So I have been reading it on my channel, Life Abolitionism. I have gone through all 11 chapters and the appendix. So if you don't want to read it, you can listen to my live stream reviews of that. And I have also made it available for free several times. So if you are interested in reading the book and you can't afford it, I can make that available for free. Just contact me on my channel, or you can email me at theantinatalistinformant@gmail.com.
Thank you for that introduction. And just so everybody knows, I have the links to purchase the book. I also have the links for the Kindle version in the description of this video. I also, of course, have links to LA's channel in the description of this video. I would highly encourage you guys to use one or all of those links. Check out the book. It's very generous that he has offered to make some or part or all of this book for free, depending on your financial situation or your needs. That says a lot about how much my guest believes in what he's talking about here today. He is not here to gaslight you. He may be right, he may be wrong, but he definitely believes what he's talking about. And I think that actually there's a lot of gravity to what he's saying. Somebody in the chat, I was going to get to this a little bit later in our conversation, but Robin is in the chat. She's a very smart lady. One of my mods here, on the channel, Robin Webster. We thank her for all of her hard work keeping the chat in line, and also for her input during the open panels. Of course, everybody knows I have a link to Robin's channel in the description of the video as well. Please do support her efforts. She said slavery is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. And that's the first thing that I thought when I first heard LA say this. And I want to just read something from page 80 in his book, because I think this kind of helps to clear this out. Because when we hear the word slavery, and LA, interject anytime you feel like it, okay? So don't worry if I say something or whatever that you don't like or you're confused about. Please feel free to step in. But slavery, when I first heard this, I thought, oh my goodness, this is not a good idea, because when we hear slavery today, because of social media especially, everybody's thoughts automatically go to the North Atlantic slave trade, right? And that's where my mind went. And I thought, well, this is just appropriating this term to try and add some kind of emotional effect or impact onto the argument. But Jay actually does lay this out in the book. And so if you go to page 80, he says, okay, the analogy is precise. And then he talks about 3 different types of slavery. So we need to understand what slavery is in this context. So chattel slavery, the master owns you outright, holds title to your person, and has a duty to maintain you as property. Wage slavery, the employer effectively rents your labor under conditions of economic coercion, benefiting from your work without formal ownership. And then there is life slavery. The state claims authority over your existence through interference with disposal rights, extracts value from your forced constitution, but disclaims maintenance obligations. So I assume that we now are talking about life slavery, because that's the whole context of the book. Is that right, LA?
Right.
Okay,
right.
That's right. So now at this point, now we can kind of conceptualize what kind of slavery it is we're talking about. This is not chattel slavery we're trying to equivocate to. So that I think I was going to get to that later, but I think that's important to bring that up now. Okay, so let me just ask a couple questions here. I marked some pages. Because my time is so limited, I didn't have a chance to get through the whole book. It is 400 and some pages, but it's very large print and the spacing is wide. So it's really not that intimidating. It's probably, I would say if it was in small print, it would probably be just under 300 pages long, I'm guessing. But with my limited time, I just didn't have time to get through the whole book. But I do want to touch on a couple of things to just try to help the audience understand what we really mean by this life enslavement, and what the state actually, what kind of authority this and the state imposes on us, and what kind of obligation we're born into. If we could start the conversation there. Page 124, taxpayer standing. And I'm not going to read through too much, but I want to just give some context for the audience. The standing doctrine particularly restricts challenges to state spending. The Supreme Court has held that taxpayers lack standing to challenge how your tax dollars are spent, reasoning that the injury is too generalized, shared by all taxpayers rather than specific to the plaintiff. This is absurd, Jay says. If the state uses your tax dollars to fund unconstitutional programs, you necessarily suffer a concrete financial injury. The state extracted money from you through force and used it for purposes that violate constitutional limits on state power. But courts hold that this injury is insufficient to establish standing. The result is that the state can violate the Constitution through spending programs, and no one has standing to challenge those violations. The taxpayers who fund the programs lack standing because the injury is too generalized. Those harmed by the programs may lack standing. The injury is not traceable to the specific funding challenged. The Constitution's limits on state spending become unenforceable. So that is one example. Do you want to elaborate on that at all, Jay?
Yes, that's just one of the many examples of these doctrines that were created by the courts. They're nowhere in the Constitution. They're nowhere in legislative statute. The court has sort of created these doctrines to insulate the state from any accountability and to insulate the federal government. Now, when most libertarians, or I don't know, what do you call them? Classical liberals, they refer to the federal government as being a problem. And I say the state is actually more of a problem, but they're both equally problematic. It's just that the state has general police powers. But that whole standing doctrine basically means that you can't sue the state unless you have an insular and concrete injury. And it's a very difficult burden. I don't just talk about standing, I also talk about mootness and rightness. I talk about political, the political question doctrine. Uh, there's so many doctrines that I listed in chapter 4 of my book, but basically, and I also talk about qualified immunity, judicial immunity. I talk about how they created the sovereign immunity, which does exist in the 11th Amendment, but it only applies to citizens of foreign states. So if you sue a state that of which you're not a resident, then that state would have sovereign immunity under the 11th Amendment. But they have actually expanded it to where you can't even sue your own state. So you effectively you don't have any rights. They exist on paper, but it's nearly impossible to enforce them. There's only specific and limited circumstances where you can actually sue the state and win. So you have comprehensive duties to the state, but the state has no duties towards you. So what I say in the book is rights without duties make anarchy, or actually it's the opposite. It's duties without rights make slavery, rights without duties make anarchy. So it's like a comprehensive system of enslavement where you have to obey the state. It's not a social contract where it's reciprocal. It's just the extraction goes one way. You have to obey, you have to pay, but you don't get any actual protection. You don't have any enforceable rights that can be protected by the state. I mean, they can choose to protect them, but they're not enforceable by the court. So I hope that answers your question. Like well, specifically about the whole standing thing, what it says in the Constitution is there has to be a case for controversy, meaning there has to be an actual justiciable dispute between you and the other party. But that the standing doctrine goes far beyond that. It's not just to say that you have to have a valid claim. It's that you have to have an injury that is specific to you, and nobody has an injury that is specific to them when you're trying to challenge political questions. It's just that you have to wait until it actually affects you. So that's why I brought up the whole rightness and mootness, because it can't be too early, but it also can't be too late. So you have to get it at just the right time. I don't want to keep going on about that because I could give more examples about that, but I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I should have mentioned at the beginning, I definitely, like I do every Sunday, we open up the panel for people to join the conversation after I've had a chance to speak with the guest. LA's time is somewhat limited today, so he's going to stay as long as he can, but he's obviously not obligated to stay any longer than he will. I'm very grateful for whatever time he can give us. But after this conversation, I will be posting a link, and everybody's welcome to be part of the conversation. But usually I kind of just open up the conversation at that point for people to talk about whatever they want, because this is really a community channel. I would really appreciate today if people would be mindful of this particular topic. We have 3 different subjects we're talking about. We've got antinatalism, we've got anarchy, and we've got medical assistance in dying. And if we could keep the questions and comments specific to that, especially while LA's in the chat with us, if he sticks around, I would really appreciate people being mindful of that. Ellie, I'd like to talk a little bit about something that's really important here, because I don't think people are really aware of it. I have a very smart audience that follows my channel, so they might be more in tune with what's going on in the world than the average person. But just for the sake of anybody who might come across this video here, the state has qualified immunity. Police officers have a certain type of qualified immunity. Can we talk a little bit about that and how that impacts the ability to actually go after I can't think of what I've lost the word. I'm so sorry. I drew a huge blank there. When you want to recover losses, damages is what I was trying to think of, right? When you have to go after the state is actually, the courts are immune in so many situations, right? There's one example I came across the other day, and I know this is a little bit old because the laws have changed slightly, and it's state to state, sometimes maybe even jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But there was in Oregon, I have a lot of family in Oregon. I know I follow a lot of what goes on in the Northwest. And there was a killer who was called the Happy Face Killer. People may have heard about it. It's kind of a famous case. Well, he killed like 8 women, I think. Terrible, terrible human being, and assaulted them and killed them. Well, 2 innocent people were initially charged and convicted with that crime, while the killer was still out on the loose. They both spent, a man and a woman, both spent 5 years in prison because they were wrongfully imprisoned, wrongfully accused, and wrongfully convicted. They finally caught this happy face killer, right? He had a mental disorder and he was very upset that he wasn't getting the attention for his sick and disgusting and depravity of his crimes. And so he started leaving notes and eventually got himself caught. So they immediately released the 2 people who just spent 5 years in prison and who knows an unspeakable damage to their personal lives with family and friends and employers and everything else, irreparable damage. And there was no course of action that they could make against the state. The state had total immunity against wrongful imprisonment. That's just one example of how we lack no power, even when we're in the right, to go after the state. Now, you've studied law. What do you think about this qualified immunity? How does it work against the people?
Well, first of all, like the state has absolute immunity anyway. So the state, you can't sue the state for damages. Now, if the state sues you, they basically waive immunity, so you can file a counterclaim. But usually, you're going to be prosecuted in a criminal case. And so, how the legislature have tried to address this, and so because you can't sue the state directly, they have created 42 USC 1983, which basically means you can't sue the state directly, but you can sue state actors. And when you sue state actors, you sue them either you can sue them in their individual capacity or their official capacity. When you sue them in their official capacity, you're suing the office itself. So even if they leave office, that lawsuit runs with the department or with the position they held at the time that you filed it. And then when you sue them in their individual capacity, then you can get damages. So usually when you get injunctive or declaratory judgment against the state actor, that's going to be in their official capacity, but damages is going to be against them in their individual capacity. And the reason why they created it this way is because the state has sovereign immunity. So you can't sue the state to get damages. The state, a federal court can't award damages against the state because of their own immunity. But unfortunately, even though Congress has created 42 USC 1983, and I know people feel overwhelmed when I start talking about these legal issues, but they created this statute in order to get around sovereign immunity. But the courts have actually abrogated this statute by creating doctrines like qualified immunity. Qualified immunity, even though Congress never made any exceptions, the courts have made exceptions, which make it very difficult to navigate around. There has to be clearly established. The state actor has to have violated clearly established law, and they have to have acted in bad faith. So you have to prove intent, and you have to show that there was a prior case with nearly identical factual circumstances. And it's nearly impossible. Every situation is going to be slightly unique. So unless they were put on warning of an exact same fact pattern that applies to your case, the courts are going to dismiss it.
Now, there's a lot to unpack here when it comes to this conversation because the antinatalist position, so the way that it's been presented, and I don't like labels because as soon as you adopt a label, you sign up for a lot of nuances that you may or may not necessarily line up with. But for the purpose of this conversation, so when we talk about antinatalism, would you tell us what you think of what is antinatalism in your words?
Well, it's a negative value to birth. We're basically against procreation. We believe that procreation is unethical. My take on at least life abolitionism is slightly different. I do believe that procreation is inherently unethical, but I think it's compounded by the fact that you're not just procreating in a state of nature, that you're actually bringing them into a system which is inherently oppressive. So that's where I take issue with it. I think that it is illegitimate to force someone to be a subject of the state.
And I appreciate you qualifying that, because I actually don't agree at a fundamental level that it is inherently or fundamentally unethical to have children, or to bring somebody into existence. The argument that I've heard, as far as that, oh, bringing them to suffering or the no consent is always boils down to the no consent argument, which I see as being a non sequitur, because talking about consent from a being that's not in existence doesn't logically follow. So by the time the consent conversation can really come up, there has to be something there, and then there some kind of cognition, and then you have to be able to weigh to get something else that's there, that's relative. So another human life is, to compare it by another type of existence. What is a good existence versus a bad existence? And I don't think that the people I've talked about this have done any of that heavy lifting. However, I am in absolute 100% agreement with you that under certain conditions, it actually is unethical to bring someone into existence. So for me, it's a conditional situation. I don't think it's a fundamental categorical situation. I think it's a hypothetical. And I also agree with you 100% with everything that you've laid out so far regarding the relationship the individual has with the state or the authority, because different countries have different setups. Is it a state? Is it a community? Is it a city? Is it what, blah, blah, blah. But it all works. It all functions the same. There's an authority above you. That authority is extracting value out of you automatically. It's assumed that that's how the relationship is going to go. And it's a top-down relationship. It's not a bottom-up relationship, and it's not an equal relationship. So I absolutely agree with you on all those points. And I think your argument is very strong because of that. So in that regard, go ahead.
Well, but my framework is a little bit different from traditional antinatalism. I sort of sidestep the non-identity problem. I focus on the individual who's here now. What I focus on is unjust enrichment, that the parents received all these benefits without providing any restitution to the child who was forced to exist, and the child has comprehensive costs that they must pay now. So I created a framework in which I believe that parents do owe a moral debt for life enslavement, for forcing their children to exist under their state, and they have to pay all the costs for something that they never chose in the first place. So I understand that the non-identity problem has been an issue for many people. My framework is unjust enrichment. I really have not had anybody respond to that, because it is unjust. You didn't consent to it. And it's like your parents wanted to receive, I guess, the benefit of raising children, of being a parent, but now you're stuck with the cost of an 80-year plus life sentence that you must maintain at your expense.
There is a relationship that's developed in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, between the parent and the child, and between siblings. And I believe there is a great value in that relationship. There can be a great value in that relationship. So I do think it's a conditional, to where in some situations it's just terrible what children have to go through and have to suffer because they're not supported by their parents sufficiently. Even if a parent legitimately wanted to give their child a good life, they are simply physically unable to do so. Thinking of a lot of children who are born into poverty and born into hunger and things of that nature. I think it's terrible to bring children into a world when you can't even feed yourself. And what I do see a lot of times is a lot of these communities that are impoverished have a lot of children. I was having a conversation with a gentleman. There's a Muslim gentleman I've had a couple of conversations with him. He's very polite. Appreciate the brother very much. We have obviously fundamental disagreements because I'm not a religious person and he's a Muslim. But we had a conversation about, is the West lost and dying? And I actually turned it around on him and said because his argument was based on the replacement rate. And replacement rate is something we should get into a little bit, because I think you and I have a much better understanding of what replacement rate actually is. But he was saying, well, the replacement rate is dropping, and he was going to try and point to atheism in the West as being like bad because we're having less kids. And I said, well, actually having less kids is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I'm actually all for having less kids. And this is going to be the hot take of this show today, where people are probably going to unsubscribe from my channel hearing me say that, because What really pisses me off, and I get this from my atheist friends as well as my religious friends, as soon as I start saying that we have too many people on this planet, the very first response I get from everybody is, well, why don't you just go jump off a fucking cliff then? You know what I mean? It's like, instead of addressing the argument, they just tell me to go off myself, which is not a very intellectually honest position to take, you know? And so when we're having, you know, less children, there's a reason for that, but we're still having too many children. But at any rate, so I told him the studies that I did in preparation for that conversation with Khalid, it turns out that the people who are actually wealthier, have more money, are the ones who are having less children. The poorest people are the ones who are having the most children, which to me seems completely backwards. Now, I don't support eugenics because I don't think that you could decide who's going to be the next Einstein or who's going to be the next uh, Michelangelo, right? I mean, we just have no way of knowing ahead of time who's going to be able to offer something amazing to the world that we could all benefit from. We can't judge an individual's experience, how much joy a particular person is going to get out of life. We have no way of knowing that in advance. What we can do is look at some actual hard statistics. And so I just want to touch really quickly. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I address that before we move on? Because
Absolutely.
The unjust enrichment applies regardless of the nature of the relationship, because regardless, even if you had a parent that you think loved you or was there for you, it's like you still have these costs that you did not choose. And so the debt is dischargeable. If you feel you have a good relationship with your parents, then you can discharge it. But the moral debt still applies because you did not ask to be brought into existence, and yet you still bear all these costs that you did not ask for. So I don't know if you got to that part of the chapter, but I do talk about how you have and these are not unreasonable demands. I believe you're entitled to competent parenting. You're entitled to respect for your autonomy. You are entitled to a mandatory inheritance, and you have the right to discharge the debt if you feel that you had good parents. So these are reasonable demands. I don't believe that parents should have the right to disinherit their children after they have forced them to exist. Even if you are estranged from your children, you created that. You didn't just create a child. You created an entire human being who will, in all likelihood, have to live to be about the age of 18. And so you should accept. I mean, the moral debt for life enslavement is irreparable. There's no way you can pay somebody for bringing them to existence, but to the extent possible, you should try to give your children the best life possible, raise them competently, and give them a fighting chance. So, yeah, that's why my philosophy is a little bit different from traditional antinatalism.
Well, I think that there's a lot to be said for that, actually, believe it or not, because I think that what we're talking about here, first of all, I actually agree, and I don't think that anybody can disagree with the facts as you've laid them out in your book and in what you've said here and what we've talked about regarding the burden that a person incurs to the state. That's demonstrable. So to try and say that doesn't exist is just cognitive dissonance. A person born into a society incurs a burden to that society. That's unavoidable. The replacement rate, since I did mention that, I want to talk about that just really quickly, okay? Because the governments are gaslighting the shit out of people when it comes to this. They are saying that governments are putting out a lot of propaganda about all this concern, this feigned concern about replacement rate. Oh, the replacement rate is dropping. And they've got religious people freaking out about it, like my friend Khalid, right? The brother who I talked about just a moment ago. He thinks this is a real problem. He's been gaslit to hell, because not to hell, literally like a Christian hell, but they've been gaslighting the shit out of him because he thinks that, oh, there's not too many people on the planet. The planet can hold trillions and trillions of people. And he's got all this crazy, oh, there's so much biomass in the prehistoric times and the planet can sustain so much life. Biomass is not relative to human population growth because biomass doesn't terraform the planet. It's a straw man is what it is of the conversation. It's actually a red herring altogether. This graph that I have up on the screen really quick here, this shows, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor moving around here or not, but this shows the, excuse me, the population growth. This dark line here represents the date and the horizontal line, and the vertical line represents people in the billions. Now, this doesn't even go up to as high as we are. This is only at 7 billion right here. The population, the global population is actually up here somewhere at 8.5 billion people. Okay, and you could look at the growth rate exponential growth rate. It literally just skyrockets here from the 19th, 20th century, probably about the 19th century. It really starts to climb, and it has just skyrocketed. So we hit, basically it started, the first major change came with the agricultural revolution about 10,000, 12,000 years ago. The population took a huge spike. Once we started farming and adopted a sedentary lifestyle, population skyrocketed. It was under 1 million people for about 200,000 to 300,000 years. And all of a sudden, once we finally got from hunter-gatherer to agriculture, the population skyrockets to a few million people almost instantly. In 2,000 years, we're up to like 15 million people roughly, right? So around 8,000 before the Common Era, 8,000 BCE. All of a sudden, we're up to like 15 million people now. Less than 1 million people on the whole planet for 200,000, 300,000 years. And in 2,000 years, we go to 15 million people. That's a massive spike if you think about the growth rate there. That growth rate steadies off. It's starting to grow slowly. And then we hit the Industrial Revolution. And then we see more spikes. And then we have a secondary, what they call the Second Industrial Revolution. And we have this, which is where we get the second huge spike. That's where we're at right now. So in the 1900s, the population is about 1 billion people. Or 1850 maybe, the population is about 1 billion people. 1900s, it hits 2 billion people. Then all of a sudden, by 1975, we are at 4 billion people. Actually, in 1950, we hit 2 billion people. In 25 years, just 25 years, the population doubles to 4 billion people. In 50 years, the next 50 years, from 1975 to now, we add another 4 billion people. We double the population again. This is massive growth rate. If you look on AI right now, I'll read it off my phone, so I have to switch the screen off for you here. What AI is telling you right now, we'll pull up the right screen here. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Sorry about this. Okay, so if you look it up, it says, I said, what will the world population be estimated in 2050? That's 25 years from now. The world population is projected to reach approximately 9.5 billion people by 2050. That's only 1 billion people. Okay, that's only the growth of 1 billion people in 25 years. Now think about what I just said. In 25 years, we saw 4 billion people. The population doubled, all right? The population doubled again in the last 50 years from 4 billion to 8 billion. And they're going to tell us in 25 years, we're only going to add 1 billion people. That literally makes no sense. I'm like, why are they gaslighting the shit out of me right now? Why would they say it's only going to add 1 billion people? Well, that's because the information they're giving you is according to United Nations and World Bank data. What the fuck does the World Bank data have to do with population growth? Why are they even at the table in this conversation? While growth is slowing, the total population is expected to rise due to longer lifespans and increased number of people reaching reproductive age. So they're actually contradicting themselves and hoping that you guys won't notice. This planet cannot sustain growth rates that we are experiencing and that we are going to experience. That is a fact. The ecosystem takes so much time to develop, to accommodate the life that's on Earth, no matter what animal life you're talking about. The fact that human beings terraform and extract so much from the planet so quickly, so much faster than the planet can replenish itself, we are like a virus on this planet. Now, we can live symbiotically with the planet. We've done it for hundreds of thousands of years. So I'm not saying that human beings are a disease entirely. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if we don't check ourselves and the rate of population growth, this planet is going to shit us out. Mother Nature is finally going to say, you know what, I'm done with you. I can't sustain you anymore. The population growth is so misunderstood because people are living longer, for one thing. So the children that are going to grow up and have children, their grandparents and great-grandparents are still alive. So that whole population growth replacement rate thing is a total bullshit number. The thing is, the government needs people to reproduce. The reason they need people to reproduce is twofold. One is the infrastructure, the roads, the buildings, the fire departments, blah, 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 the schools, the entire infrastructure needs people to fix the roads and to repair the buildings and install the plumbing and all that bullshit. The other thing is the economic system that we have needs constant influx of buyers, right? Of consumers. So we pump more people into the infrastructure. We pump more people into the economic system. it increases the burden of the infrastructure and the economic system. It needs more people. So we pump more people into it. And it's just continuously self-perpetuating problem. It's never going to slow down and never going to stop unless we do something significant to reset all of this and come up with a better system. What do you think about all that so far, LA?
Well, my philosophy, the goal of life abolitionism is to dismantle the state through demographic collapse. But just to get back to your points, those numbers are based on financial planning. It's not based on environmental sustainability. They have already overextended themselves, and so they need more people so that they can maintain their current budgets. They don't want to make any cuts. They don't want to make projections based on the resources that they have. They just want to constantly expand. And by the way, there are not enough jobs for these people. So as I say on my channel, an oversupply of labor actually leads to depressed wages. So it is in the state's interest for you to procreate. It is in the interest of the capitalists for you to procreate, because they can exploit the oversupply of labor to make you desperate because there's not enough jobs to go around. It is not in your interest. The state's interest is not the same as yours. You need to understand that there's no unity, there's no curvature between you and the state. The state is here to extract. The capitalists are here to extract, and so you have a moral duty to protect yourself and your children. So if you listen to these projections and you feed into it, what you will not hear is how it benefits you. What you will hear is how it benefits the state. They want to maintain their own continuity. They want to maintain a state. So the declining birth rate is not your. And actually, like I say on my channel, when you look at the countries that do have low birth rates. And by the way, the population growth in the United States is not just due to fertility rates, it's also due to migration. But these countries that have low population growth due to low fertility and due to very strict immigration policies, the government is actually far more responsive. The government will give them better social programs, healthcare, good, decent wages, good housing, good transportation, and so and many of these states, many of these nation states even have the right to medical assistance in dying. So I also talk about how overpopulation dilutes the power of your individual vote. It can be diluted to such an extent that you become politically irrelevant. Now you have to form PACs and super PACs. Then you have to raise all this money and lobby. If you're just an average voter, then your vote becomes completely irrelevant. And so it creates a whole problem, a whole host of problems. They think that it's just about land space, that, oh, well, you can crowd everybody into the state the size of California. It has nothing to do with that. It's about quality of life. It's about resource management. Now, they think they have debunked Thomas Malthus. They have not. They have, I guess, they have artificially propped up the population through technology and innovation, but eventually you're going to run into a brick wall. There's been so many problems with their propping up of this unsustainable population through factory farming, through the agriculture, which has led to deforestation. We would actually do better to decrease the population, to save the planet, to save the economy, to basically, you're basically bringing yourself into extinction is what I'm saying. We talk about global heating, they will talk about conserving resources, and I'm going to stop in a second. I don't want to rant on forever, but they will talk about conserving resources, conserving energy, basically consume less. But if you want to consume less, the easiest way to consume less is to reduce the number of consumers. Yet they want to continue producing more consumers, and yet they want you to sacrifice. They want you to live a life of minimalism, a hard life of self-sacrifice, so they can maintain their system at your expense. And I reject that.
This is the problem. Now I don't even know if I want to address it. There's a little bit of gaslight that's gone in the comments, but I'm just going to let it flow because people have a right to their own opinions as well, and I don't want to shoot people down. I do want to show one more statistic here really quick while I've got this up, and then I'll be done. I'll get off my soapbox about this. This is really important right here. Let me read this. This is approximately 5 million children under the age of 5 die each year worldwide. with nearly half of these deaths occurring in the neo-national period. Globally, an estimated 4.9 children died before reaching their 5th birthday in 2024, including 2.3 million newborns who died within the first 28 days of life, highlighting the critical vulnerability of neo-national period. UNICEF, UN Interagency Group of Child Mortality Estimation. This translates to roughly 13,300 under 5 deaths every day, or about 9 deaths every minute. Causes of deaths include infectious diseases such as pneumonia, diarrhea, malaria, and meningitis. Complications at birth, including preterm birth, birth asphyxia, and trauma. Malnutrition, which contributes to weakened immunity and higher susceptibility to disease. Congenital anomalies, and other preventable conditions. Most of these deaths are preventable. Most of these deaths are preventable with low-cost interventions such as vaccines, antibiotics, oral rehydration therapy, micronutrient supplementation, insecticide-treated bed nets, and improved maternal and newborn care. So let me get off this screen here. Bear with me, everybody. You know how bad I am at all this shit. Okay, which screen am I even looking at here? Okay, so let me pull this down, pull this off.
Right. So one of the things that Thomas Malthus addressed was that there were natural checks that basically, if you were self-sustaining, like there's a natural check. But the human population is actually propped up through government intervention, through globalization, basically redistributing resources from halfway across the world. And so you can artificially increase. So basically, the human species are the only species on the planet. It's the only species on the planet that has an unlimited growth potential. Other species have natural checks. There's a balance between the lions and the gazelle and the zebra, the alligators. They all have their natural checks, but through medicine, through food supplies being redistributed, there's no checks for human. And the human species, by the way, is the most destructive species, especially a civilized human. It's not really a problem for someone who is living in a developing world, who is, basically living off the land. They have basically a zero carbon footprint. But if you live in the United States, if you live in the West, you consume about 20 to 60 times the amount of resources that someone in the developing world, the global South. And so what you saw is actually correct about how the agriculture development has actually led to massive population growth. I don't really want to get into this, but basically, when you move to a plant-based diet, that leads to more unchecked population growth. And they don't want to address the root problem. That if you actually live to sustain, my book I call for local self-sustaining economies where you can get off the global economy. That's in the appendix, but this is a recipe for disaster. They already know that the global economy is going to crash at some point, and it's going to be a domino effect because we're all tethered together. But I don't know if you want to move on to another topic.
Oh, you're doing a great job. The way I'm really liking the flow of this conversation. You're just picking up where I'm putting down it, and we have like I said, there's a lot of common ground that we have despite the fundamental disagreement about the morality of the position itself. I think that it's like I said, it's hypothetical, not categorical. And I do want to talk about the hypothetical actually with you, because I talk on this channel a lot about morality because I believe that morality is objective, and most philosophers are actually in agreement with me. However, the average person that I talk to on the internet seems to think that morality is subjective. And I get why people think that. Religious people will claim it's objective, but they don't know what the definitions of objective or subjective even are. So they're actually wrong about their position about it would be subjective according to their worldview. They just don't even realize it. But morality actually is objective. And I feel like I make a strong argument for that. We're talking about duties and rights. Although I believe that morality is objective, I can ground it in nature, and I can defend the normative through the hypothetical and get around the is ought that way. If we want to live in a society without theft, we ought not to steal from each other. We ought to enforce laws against stealing. It makes sense. It's objectively true. We don't decide that that's the most effective way to stop stealing. Just stopping stealing is objectively the way to stop stealing. That's just a fact. But when you talk about the moral debt, and you talk about duties and rights, I don't actually believe in duties and rights. I believe in reasons. I believe that we have a logical reason to live in a moral framework. But I don't believe in rights or duties, because I don't think rights or duties can be inherent per se, because everything ultimately gets boiled down to nature and the laws of physics. Everything that we are involved in our lifespans and the birth and everything else, reproduction, that all comes from evolution. And evolution doesn't have a stance. So evolution can't administer rights or determine rights. So how, in your framework, do you believe that morality is objective or subjective? How do you deal with that issue?
Well, I explicitly say that we don't have any duties. We don't have any duties. We don't have any positive duties just because we exist. But there are duties that you voluntarily assume. If you choose to be a parent, then inherent with parenting is a duty to take care of your children. It's not something that somebody external to you imposed. You voluntarily assume that. So I believe that the duty between a parent to their children should be enforced because they voluntarily assumed it. I don't believe I have a duty to a random stranger. In my book, I call for mutualism. If you help me, if you support my cause, I will support your cause. If it's in my rational self-interest to do it, then I will do it. And it's just extraction where it's unilateral, where you benefit and I don't. No, that's not a legitimate duty. I don't believe in positive duties. I believe in negative duties, and I believe in reciprocal duties.
So this actually gets into what's called game theory. And I don't know how many people are really familiar with that, but essentially game theory, it's a exercise, experiment, thought exercise, whatever you want to say, to find out how people interact with each other in the most effective way, and what people will choose to do to, I guess, rudimentally say, win the game. And there's a prisoner thought experiment that oftentimes gets used. You have two prisoners, and what will they do to basically succeed? And will they help each other equally? Will one guy kill the other guy and take all of his envelopes and all of his soap and toothbrush and everything for him, so on and so forth? What kind of relationship will they maintain to be the most successful they could be? And what they find in game theory, they run this to computer simulations thousands and thousands of times. They also ask people, they do it themselves in real life studies and stuff like that. And what they found after numerous times, thousands of times, tens of thousands of times of running this, they found that the most successful way to live, to exist, is called tit for tat. Basically, you have to have a very low tolerance, but a certain amount of forgiveness, because nobody's perfect, and because nature can do stuff that we can't control, right? So we could both split the coke. If you and I lived on an island and we shared the coconuts, you could have some kind of natural disaster, a mudslide or something. It takes away a bunch of your coconuts. That's not your fault, right? So I might give you some extra coconuts just because you came into hard times, right? But if I just give you all my coconuts just for the sake of giving you my fucking shit for no reason, that's ultimately not the best way for me to exist. And it doesn't necessarily benefit you either, because if I'm not living my best existence and we live together, you're not having the person next to you living their best life, which actually negatively impacts your life. So a tit for tat, two people both succeeding, is actually the best way for everyone to live and to exist and to ultimately win the game, right? So that's really what you're talking about here is game theory, is tit for tat. It's mutual accommodation. You give to me, I give something to you, we both benefit. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, in anarchy, the term that we use is mutual aid. So yeah, it's supposed to be mutually beneficial.
When I hear anarchy, this is another term that gets used a lot of ways by a lot of people. There's technically, I guess, a political position, right, that people may not even be familiar with. There's a social position, and then there's a personal idea that people have of anarchy, which is just tear everything down. So when you say anarchy, what is it that you're actually talking about?
Well, anarchy is basically a position in which you question the legitimacy of authority. And there's different types of anarchy, but it's like there's parental anarchy, there's state anarchy. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have laws. It doesn't mean that you can't have a government, but it has to be, well, it's not legitimate unless it's based on consent. And so from that standpoint, I don't believe, I mean, procreation obviously can never be consensual. So that is necessarily a vertical relationship, which vertical relationships on an anarchy are just illegitimate outright. I believe the state, as it currently exists, is vertical, and so if it was structured differently, then it could be legitimate. But there is no consent. You're just born into it. At no point did anybody ask for your consent. The mere fact that you exist does not create legitimacy for the state. That is an imposition that your parents chose. That's the whole point, that they basically enslaved you to the state without your consent. They made you a citizen and a subject to a social contract, which really only goes one way. And so, yeah, I think that these institutions are illegitimate.
When I think of anarchy, and when I hear a lot of people talking about anarchy, I think they're thinking of it in the context of what Ryu has said here in the chat. And Ryu, it's always so good to have you stop by. I just absolutely love your input in hearing what you have to say. He says anarchy originates from the Greek word anarchia, meaning without a ruler or leaderless. It combines a prefix "an," which in Greek means without, and archos, ruler or leader. So this is what I think the majority of people think anarchy actually means, is you have no ultimate leader. And I don't think that, two things. For one thing, I don't think any society can actually survive without good leadership, because not everybody has the same abilities mentally. Some people are really good at building machines. Some people are really good at growing the food. Some people are really good at organizing all the people. That's just the way it is. Some people are really good at nurturing. Some people are good at medicine. So you need people to fill niches. And I think leadership is a necessary niche that needs to be fulfilled for a group to be successful. You can't have a leaderless situation, in my opinion. Now, maybe you could convince me I'm wrong about that, but I just don't think that's possible. So when anarchy tears everything down, I see it as being a temporary state. Always I see it as temporary, because ultimately societies always evolve into a organized structure of some kind of leadership. It happens. We see societies collapse all the time. Massive, major, successful empires, the biggest empires in the world throughout history, have collapsed. We saw the first, what we consider to be the first real civilization, with the Sumerians, right? They ultimately collapsed. The Akkadians collapsed. The Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Persians, the Romans collapsed. We saw it in modern history. We saw it with USSR. We saw it massive problems with starvation, millions of people dying in China. We saw US crashing the economy. So things crash all the time, and we just rebuild them and start over again. We don't step back and say, oh, we can't be leaderless, so we have to have a leader. So what do you think about this? What does anarchy offer as a solution to this?
Well, I don't know. I think that I think statists often make appeals to necessity to say that because we need a leader, that makes it legitimate. I don't believe it does. And again, I don't believe that you can't have a government or you can't have leaders to represent you, but it still can be horizontal. It's not that you can't have government. It's about how it's structured. If it's top down, where people literally think that the president is your leader that decides, makes like the most consequential decisions about your existence, when you don't even own your life and the state can prohibit you from terminating your life and you're forced to exist against your will, that is a system that is not only vertical, but it is a system of enslavement. The state owns your life. You are forced to exist whether you want to or not, and you were delivered into that oppressive system by your parents, or as I call them in my book, your life enslavers.
One of the reasons I haven't talked very much about this on my channel, I have mentioned it, the overpopulation problem. We need to start breeding, so to quote unquote, reproducing more responsibly. But I think as an environmentalist, because the bigger the population, being as many people as we have, and I haven't even talked about the burden on the planet specifically. Like we talk about pollution, we talk about man-made climate change, we talk about factory farming and all the harm that's done to farm animals. Now, I'm not a vegan because, again, I think there are some fundamental problems with arguments for veganism, but I do agree that factory farming is a major problem, and it's a major injustice to animals and a major injustice to the planet. The only reason we have these factory farms is because we have too many mouths to feed, so to speak. Now, Set Scales has said something. I'm not sure if this is in direct response to what I said or if he's talking to somebody else in the chat, but this is actually a misrepresentation of what I said, because he's plugged in the word coercive power structure. I talked about leadership, not coercive power structure. So again, I'm not sure if that's addressed to me and what I said, or if that's to somebody else, or maybe just a misunderstanding that they had there. But I don't think that humans ultimately need to have a coercive power structure. That's not the point that I'm making. I think go ahead.
I assume that he's talking about a vertical relationship where you have a leader that's top down. I would tend to agree with him that most societies have not chosen to have vertical relationships. Like in a state of nature, they don't exist that way. In Africa, the Native American population, all these other indigenous cultures did not choose to live in horizontal or vertical power structures. They were imposed them. They were forced to become civilized and to live under coercive power structures where the state basically owns your life. That is the social contract. Even according to Rousseau, the state is the master of all private property. The state decides. Well, the way Rousseau framed it is that basically your life is a conditional grant from the state. That when the state tells you to die, you shall die. And basically your parents deliver you into the system. So he even said that basically it goes beyond the scope of legitimate parental authority, that parental authority is supposed to be temporary. So if your authority as a parent is just to raise me, to teach me how to exist as a functioning adult, then there's no point in that relationship where you had authority to enslave me to the state.
So I agree with what you're saying, and absolutely. However, none of this actually refutes what I said about the leadership. The ancient civilizations still had leadership. It was a more mutually beneficial and more symbiotic relationship and built on equality. I agree with 100%, but it was not absent of leadership. So what I'm talking about is the need for leadership, and the evidence that I have to back up my claim would be found in the historical record, but also in evolution itself. We are a social species, and all social species of animals have structures to them. That's why they call them social. They not only do they need each other for their survival, but they fill different roles. So the ants have the queen ant, they have the worker ant, they have the builder ant, so on, the carpenter, the construction ant, so on and so forth. The bees, the wolf pack has the dire wolf that leads the pack. They have leaders, they have hierarchies. The pride of lions has the same thing. All social species have some type of a hierarchical type of structure to it, but it doesn't have to be coercive. It can be completely symbiotic, and it can be mutually respectful and mutually beneficial. So the system we have now is not mutually beneficial, and it's not mutually respective. I think you've done a great job of articulating that, and I agree to 100%. But I don't think that means that fundamentally that systems have to develop that way. I think we've just fucked it up so bad. That's what we tend to do, because the power is such an intoxicating. More power just begets more power. And that's the problem. But ancient civilizations and ancient cultures, like the Native Americans here, they did live symbiotically with the land. They didn't take too much from more than what the land had to offer. Just like you talked about the relationship between the lion and the gazelle, you're absolutely right. If the lion eats too many deer, then the lion will ultimately starve itself to death, right? If the deer eats too much of the grass, then the deer will starve itself to death. That's just a fact that's guided by evolution. This is what I base objective morality on, actually, is this cause and effect. right? If I steal from you, it's going to cause you to distrust me. That's just a fact. So the best thing to do is to not steal. That allows both of us to live our best life. And we want to live a good life. Although I don't believe we have duties or rights inherently, we have reasons, logical reasons that can be justified logically absent of emotion, which is why I don't believe that morals are emotivist. So I do think that from an objective moral position, an argument can be made for fixing or remedying this current life enslavement situation. The reason I don't talk a lot about this is because as soon as we start talking about these things, then the next question that people have is, okay, how do we fix it? What do we do to actually fix it? It looks like in your book, and I haven't had a chance to go through this chapter very much, but it does look like you have some remedies that are offered. Remedy 1, recognize the natural right to autonomous disposal. Remedy 2 requires full socialism as minimum maintenance obligation. And let me see here. So you've got 2 remedies. Is that right? 2 remedies listed.
This it's basically the impossible choice that if the state is going to force you to exist against your will, and the state is basically going to act as if you don't own your life, then basically the state should maintain its living property. If I'm going to be forced to exist, then it should be completely at society's expense. If the state claims that it has an interest in preserving the sanctity of life, then actually take an interest in preserving the sanctity of life. Don't claim that you have an interest in my life, and yet I'm the one who has to bear all the costs. You do not have an interest in my life, and if you did, then you would be the one paying for it.
Now, is that under Remedy 2, require full socialism as minimum maintenance obligation, would you say?
That's more of a strategy. This is like to force them to, if you're not going to give me the right to terminate my involuntary existence, then you should have to pay for it. So it's 2 choices, either giving my right to opt out or pay for my involuntary existence. But I should not have to pay for it.
Let me just read the first, very, very, very short, just a few lines here. If the court refuses to recognize protection for your autonomous disposal, if the state maintains the prohibition that forces your continuation, then the state must provide comprehensive material support as the minimum maintenance obligation for the property it owns.
Right.
I don't think that's an unreasonable demand, actually. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. Now, how to get there, I have no idea, because I didn't study politics in college. I'm not really savvy with politics. In fact, as a lot of people who will follow my channel know, I'm really ignorant when it comes to modern politics. I've been so frustrated with the way politics have gone in my lifetime that I've just kind of thrown my hands up with it. I feel a little bit lost. I think the only way that I can help the situation is not by voting for one of the 2 worst people I could possibly imagine on the face of this earth, either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. That's literally a no-win situation. I just give up and try and make the world better from the ground up by trying to make my life better, by attaining self-respect, by teaching other people how to make their lives better, by respecting me and letting me respect them and respecting the planet, and basically fix this from the bottom up. But I don't know if somebody could come along and say, listen, this is how we should set up a perfect political system. Would it be globalization? Would it be, capitalism? Would it be, Ayn Rand talks about something that's very interesting. And I came by your channel the other day just to say hello really quickly and kind of shut that vegan down, because he was gaslighting the hell out of all of you guys, and it was starting to piss me off. And I do apologize for letting that continue, because I know you were trying to get off of that topic, but I just, man, that's things that vegans say. I'm all for respecting animals and animal, but I don't believe in rights, inherent rights. I don't think animals have rights. That doesn't make any sense. People don't even have rights per se. We have responsibilities to logic. It makes most sense. We have reasons, I should say, not responsibilities. We have logical reasons to do good things and to act morally because it's to our biggest benefit. But we don't have a duty to do that, in my opinion. Animals certainly don't have rights and duties. The lion does not give a fuck about what you think. The lion will eat your ass if he's hungry and does not care what you think about him. That's just a fact. So when I came on, I was talking, you mentioned Ayn Rand, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was going to talk to you about Ayn Rand, because in Ayn Rand's situation, or in her position, was capitalism and egoism. Basically, that coercion is wrong in every sense. So taxes are a form of coercion. Most of what you've talked about today is actually a form of coercion of the state onto the citizen or onto the individual, right? So, what do you think about Ayn Rand's version of capitalism as some kind of solution? Because she still believed in certain authority of the state to stop coercion and to stop physical force.
Right. I agree with Ayn Rand only as far as she articulated her position on ethical egoism. I believe that man is not a sacrificial animal, that the achievement of his own happiness is probably the highest achievement possible. But when she gets into capitalism, I believe that's utter nonsense. I believe that first, I mean, and I addressed this in chapter 7, that property rights only exist because of the state's monopoly on violence. They don't exist in a state of nature. The state will give you legal title, which allows you to live without working, because the fact that the state will deploy violence in order to maintain this artificial fiction of property is the basis of property rights. And Pradhan actually explained that property is theft because property exists in nature and nobody has a right to claim property that they're not making productive use of. So those who work, those who make productive use of property are the rightful owners. And so the fact that you own property and you get to use that monopoly to extract value from people who work under the work or starve coercion, those people are the rightful owners. And those people should own the property because it's like the property actually gives you a monopoly on the means of production, but without those property rights, you would actually have to work. So you don't create any value just because you own property. The managers or the CEOs of corporations, just because they have power, they're no more valuable than the workers at the bottom. Yeah, I think Ayn Rand was full of shit when it came to capitalism. I don't agree with her. I think, first of all, money itself, the monetary system is a form of coercion. You're forced to engage in a unit of exchange that the state has already determined. The state has determined that the federal note is the unit of exchange. If you try to exchange in any other currency, then that is against the law. So I think Ayn Rand did not address these things. She didn't address that the fact that you can't have capitalism without a state in the first place. So, and clearly she had a lot of contempt for anarchists. She explicitly said so.
She actually did. She spoke out against libertarians and anarchists and promoting her capitalist system. I had a PhD scholar on my channel actually who is an Ayn Randian, talks exclusively about Ayn Rand on his channel. Dr. Dan Norton. I do really enjoy my conversations with him. Excuse me, my allergies got the back door open. It's such a beautiful day, though. At any rate, sorry, I digress. Yeah, so he talks a lot about Ayn Rand, and it'd be really interesting to have the two of you sit down, maybe in a conversation together. I'd like to set something like that up, actually, because you're really well spoken, LA, and you're very well read, and I'd be curious to see how you guys go back and forth regarding this. But for the purpose of our conversation, and we are coming up on the clock here, this has been such a great conversation, and we haven't even gotten into, I think, the most important part of what we're going to discuss today, which is MAID. And I want to give the audience a chance to hopefully interact with you at least a little bit if they're interested before you have to go. The money thing, really quick to touch on that, is a joke. There's only 3 things of actual value in the entire world, and it has to do with shelter, food, and healthcare. And I include clothing under shelter. Okay, that's it. That's all. That's the only things of actual value that we have outside of our relationships with each other to improve our lives. But as far as material value, there's food that sustains us, there's shelter that protects us from the elements, and there's healthcare that protects us from disease. That's it. Nothing. The paper that we have in our pocket that has a number written on it is literally only has value because we assert that it has value. It's an illusion, right? And so the government, the way the system is set up with so many people on the planet, they have to give people this illusion that their time spent at their telemarketing job or in a car dealership or whatever the fuck people are doing with their time actually has some kind of value, inherent value, but it doesn't. And I'm not trying to be hurtful to people when I say that. I'll say it to myself as well. I owned 2 businesses. and I sold both of them, made good money. Money's good, right? Because sure, I could use money to play the game like everybody else. But the thing that drove me insane about both of my businesses is I had to realize that I had no value. No, I was doing nothing of real value to the world. Even though I was quote unquote successful, I knew in my own heart, in my own mind, that it was just it was an image. It was an illusion. There was no real value. I wasn't providing food. I wasn't providing shelter, and I wasn't providing medicine for anybody. All I was doing was exchanging paper with money, with numbers written on it. And it's really hard for me to have to swallow that pill and be honest with myself. But I would encourage people to really step back in the situation and think, what are we actually doing of value? If we're not making the world better for people to have a better existence, then we really aren't doing anything useful, in my opinion, unless you're working in the medical field, you're working in food, or you're working in building houses. Because I do believe that we can make the world a really great place to live. I believe we actually have that ability. I believe that there is value in the experience in life itself. So there's actually an intrinsic value to the quote unquote suffering that we experience. It's set up by nature. I also believe you're not going to stop procreation by animals. That's driven by nature. So to try and fight against it is meaningless, in my opinion. The best thing to do is try to extract as much value for everybody as possible. And I believe that is possible by living the good life, right? By having self-respect, respect for the planet, and respect for each other. But there are a lot of people, I would argue most people don't even know how to live a good life. They're chasing that money. They're chasing that fame, that fortune, the drugs, the alcohol, whatever it is, the mirage that they think is going to give them the good life. And they're just wasting away like hamsters in the wheel. They're going nowhere. When people eventually say, I don't want to be on this ride anymore, it is illegal to try to end your own existence. It's unlawful, which is insane. That's where the slavery, in my opinion, really comes into play. And you talk about that in your book, and that's remedy number 1. Recognize the natural right to an autonomous disposal. If the court is serious about bodily autonomy and the right to be free from unwanted restraint, it must recognize a natural right to an autonomous disposal over one's own person. This right should permit access to medically assisted death without state-imposed criteria beyond verification of capacity and voluntariness. This remedy follows from the court's own precedent. If bodily autonomy protects the refusal of life-sustaining treatment, it must also protect the refusal of life-sustaining existence. The distinction the court drew in the Glucksberg is, which I don't even know what that is arbitrary.
The Supreme Court decision.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Is arbitrary and incoherent. Both the refusal of treatment and seeking assistance in dying exercise the same fundamental right to control one's own person. Recognizing this right would eliminate the secondary breach. The state would no longer force continuation against your will. You could opt out peacefully through medically assisted means. That's page 101 of your book. And that, I believe, is the truest thing that's said in this book. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but that to me was what really hits home. Medical assistance in dying is the only reasonable, rational solution to overcome these objections, because everything that you brought up here about the state's control, debt to the state, so on and so forth, is factually correct. I don't think anybody can deny it. Now, we'll let people, talk and join the chat, and maybe somebody will show me something that I wasn't seeing before, but I can't see any holes in what you've said at all. As far as the debt to the state goes. So if a person doesn't have a right to leave the situation, they are in fact enslaved, not just enslaved, but imprisoned. And that is objectively morally wrong, in my opinion. Personal autonomy, objective morality is based fundamentally, it's grounded in nature and the phenomenon of cause and effect, but it is really based on equality and autonomy, personal autonomy. But you don't have personal autonomy if you do not have the rights to autonomous disposal, self-disposal. And I think there should be a humane option as opposed to just jumping off a bridge somewhere, right? We should give people a peaceful way to exit. That's the most humane thing. We fought and still fight to this day really hard to regulate how they eliminate animals in farms and factory farms. They're supposed to go through a particular process. There's been books written on about what the slaughterhouses used to do to these animals to eliminate them before they would process them, right? And we were like, hey, you got to do this in a more humane fashion. We take better care of the animals, the cows that we eat, than we do our own people that don't want to exist. Do you have something you want to add to that? I know you do.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've addressed that also. The fact that they will basically champion animal rights without even addressing the fact that animals have a right that humans don't. Animals have a right to a humane death. Humans don't. And so that's my main objection to procreation. It's not, it's like because they have a quote unquote right to procreate, how does that create a duty for me to continue existing against my will? Yes, they wanted to have children, but yet now I'm being forced to carry out a life sentence of 80 plus years against my will. I think that is unjust. And if that is the case, and by the way, they brought you into the system knowing that what those were the conditions. And if that's the case, then they should have not. So there's two debts. Parents owe a debt to their children, and the state owes a debt. They either need to pay us socialism or give us the right to medical assistance in dying. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that we don't own our lives, and yet we have to pay to maintain it. If I'm your slave, under the slave codes, the slave master had to pay to maintain their own slaves. I don't know if you got to that part of the book, that slaves actually could sue their masters to provide them with food and shelter. I mean, of course, it probably never happened, but on the books, under the slave codes, the slave masters had a duty to maintain their living property. Aristotle said the same thing. If you're a slave master, you're harming yourself by not maintaining your property, but yet the state has a duty. The state basically has no duties to us whatsoever. It's basically every man for himself. They'll talk about the taxpayers, how the taxpayers should be burdened, but yet you're going to be burdened as an individual. I'm going to be forced to exist because society believes that life is sacred. And so I love how they frame this, because they make it seem like I'm like they're the victims and I'm the aggressor because I don't want to exist. I'm selfish. I'm against order and I'm against democracy. And so basically I should just continue existing against my will, be happy about it, shut up, go sit in a corner and just be okay with it, not complain about it at all, because I'm solipsistic, I'm narcissistic. My misery doesn't matter. Other people's misery doesn't matter. The majority has decided that life is sacred, so what we want does not matter. And we're supposed to just go along with it. I just think that is untenable.
And I agree with you 100%. Not with what people are saying about you, but I agree with what you've said here, how you've laid it out. And the thing that's so wild to me is not only are we giving animals a more peaceful exit, but there are situations where, and this is how you know the whole system is set up, because they only want people who are productive. They only want to, and they have to maintain a certain illusion that life has this inherent value to people. They do it through religion, right? So they say, oh yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll take care of that elderly person who's in the hospital because they know that somebody's going to pay for it. They wouldn't do it if somebody's going to pay for it, because if somebody can't pay for it, they won't do it. The other thing is that you have a criminal. Many states and a lot of countries have a death penalty, right? So the state will eliminate people at will. They also go to war and they drop bombs on each other and kill people by the thousands, no problem, and they justify it all the time. But as soon as a person wants to say, hey, listen, I want to get off this roller coaster, I'm not having a good time on this ride anymore, the state says, no, you can't do that. And they gaslight you by telling you're going to go to hell and burn in eternity or some other bullshit like that. And other people will try to say, well, people have a responsibility to raise their children, so they can't end their existence, because what about their children? But we actually take care of children. We have programs to take care of children. If their parents died a natural death or like in a car accident or something, we wouldn't say, oh, well, too bad for those kids. Their parents got killed in a car crash. No, we would say, hey, we need to take care of these children. So we still need to take care of the children. If the parent has personal autonomy and doesn't want to exist anymore, they're not providing a good life for that child anyway. So, and we have to know that's true. So to use the children as an excuse, or you're hurting your family members, they're going to care about you, they're going to miss you. Well, that might be true, but that's not your responsibility at the end of the day. Your responsibility is ultimately to your own existence, right? That's just fundamentally based on autonomy. You have autonomy. If you don't have autonomy and we don't make that the foundation of everything, equality, then we don't have anything. We can't build anything up from there that actually functions and is free of slavery or ownership, a vertical relationship. And so I think that that's where I'm going to go ahead and stop my haranguing right now, because I don't have a solution other than trying to fix the world from the bottom up, treat each other with more respect, treat yourselves with some self-respect, um, appreciate the experience for what it is, because I do think that life has a tremendous amount of value, but I respect your right to do what you want with your life as long as you're not harming somebody else directly. And other than that, I have no right to tell you what to do with your life. I can help coach you up and say, I've overcome some terrible, terrible things. I've had a very rough past and I've overcome it. And having overcome it, I can look back and say, wow, man, that was fucking rough, but that was worth it because of the person that I am today. And I could hope to inspire you, the listener, to fight through what you're fighting through, because I can tell you that it is worth it if you can overcome it. You can attain courage. You can attain the virtue of courage. You can attain the virtue of humility. You can attain the virtue of wisdom. These things cannot be attained without the struggle, without going through the journey. And experience itself, you either have it or you don't. And so if you value it, you got to pay the price to what it takes to have the experience. If you're not in existence, you're not having the experience. That's just the way it is. It's black or white. It can't be any other way. So the best thing to do is work together to make the existence as wonderful as possible for all people and ultimately all living creatures. In my opinion, I think that you can make the world better for all living organisms, ultimately by living symbiotically with nature, just like Native American Indians did, indigenous tribes in all countries living symbiotically with nature. Once we start building up and propping up these systems, they are propped up on this false illusion of value, false illusion of morality, oftentimes using mythology and illusion of religion to justify terrible things to do to yourself, to do to other human beings. Free yourself from that mental trap. Before I open up the panel to let people join LA, I'd like to give you a chance to have just some closing words uninterrupted on this part of the conversation, and then I'll start getting the link post in the chat.
Well, I guess I just would like to get back to the right to medical assistance dying, because the critique that I've received is, what about the children? What about the vulnerable, the elderly? And it's just like, nobody was thinking about these people in the first place. Nobody's thinking, if these people were not put in a miserable condition in the first place, they would not even want the right to medical assistance in dying. So that in and of itself proves that these people don't actually care about them. And even if those vulnerable people do exist, that says nothing about my rights to no longer exist. They're using that as a smokescreen to say, look over here, look at the children, look at the elderly, so therefore you should not have the right to exist, to no longer exist. It was the American Medical Association which lobbied to criminalize medical assistance in the first place, because they were trying, after they had given themselves a monopoly on the practice of medicine, now they want to protect their practitioners so that they don't have to be involved in the procedure. But my philosophy does not call for their involvement in the first place. My philosophy says that anybody should have the right to assist, because the criminal statutes don't just criminalize medical assistance specifically. It also criminalizes any encouragement, any information, even transportation to a facility, any type of assistance whatsoever. And so I would decriminalize, not legalize it, but decriminalize it, so that anybody who wanted to assist can do that. And there was one other point I wanted to make. The gaslighting about you have the ability to do it. They'll say, well, you already have the ability. You could just jump off a cliff. You could whatever, and it's gaslighting. They would not tell an animal to do that themselves. It is the most inhumane thing ever. I did not bring myself into this world. So if I didn't do it myself, there was a lot of assistance in bringing me here. There was medical assistance on the front end, but I'm not entitled to any medical assistance on the back end. If I want to escape my involuntary existence, I should be entitled to medical assistance. I'm not asking for a legal right. I'm asking or demanding that it be decriminalized so that I can hire a private actor and engage in a private contract to hire someone to assist me to achieve my stated goal. It does not require the state's involvement at all. I call for a stateless death.
I'd like to thank our guest today, and I'll do a closing outro at the end of the show and address all that because I do have some different views on whether or not it should be unregulated. I don't support that. Because I think that leads to too many potential problems. I think that it should be regulated, heavily regulated. I think that there should be checks and balances throughout the process to where because there are a lot of people who suffer from mental disorders and also terrible, tragic temporary problems where like the loss of a loved one or something, and they might be in a temporary state of massive depression, but they could get over that if they were given enough time. So what I want to do though is open up the panel to my guests here, and anybody's welcome to join the conversation. And I'll do it in order of how people came. I'm very proud to introduce you to B.S. Lewis. I don't know if you've ever interacted with him on the internet before, but this gentleman is extremely intelligent, and he has some really great arguments in regards to the religion, the arena of religion. He's got a trilemma that I've seen him trip up a lot of Christians with in particular. So I'm so honored to have B.S. Lewis join us in the conversation today. So we'll start with you, B.S. Please feel free to have the floor.
Thanks. That's a lot of praise. You guys picked a pretty heavy topic, man. So I'm pro euthanasia, but I was going to ask about what you just mentioned was the mental health aspects of it, mainly when it comes to like psychosis and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, you have to be a competent adult. So just like any other contract, you have to be competent. If you're not competent, if you're a minor, if you're mentally incapacitated, then that does not create a valid contract. There has to be meeting of the minds. And I just would like to say that if there's all these standards about and regulating medical assistance in dying on the back end, then maybe there should be regulations on the front end, because there's no competency for becoming a parent. Anybody can procreate. I'm not even for state regulations, but I just feel that they do want to have double standards and say protecting the vulnerable. But what about protecting these vulnerable children who are forced to exist, forced to be abused by these parents and put into this oppressive state? Why don't we regulate those who procreate instead of regulating competent adults who don't want to exist anymore?
Yeah, so my follow-up question would be, wouldn't the people in charge of determining the competency of the individual be the very society that you're like lashing out against?
No, because I would be able, because I'm not supporting, I'm assuming you're saying that I would be going to a doctor or I would want the state to do it. No, I'm calling for the right to a stateless death. Anyone who has the, I don't know, the capacity to assist in terminating a person's life should be able to do it, whether they are licensed or not. It does not require a licensed physician to do it. I would use the anarchist approach that you should maybe have some private accreditation thing that does not involve the state at all, and then you would basically, what is a caveat emptor, buyer beware. You have to exercise your own due diligence to figure out who is competent to do it. The problem with statism is that because some people are incompetent, they want to take our rights and basically paint us with a broad brush to say some people are incompetent, so therefore everybody's incompetent. Now everyone must lose their rights because some people can't make decisions for themselves.
So in your model, who declares competency?
The individual. It's my life. I decide who is competent to assist me in maintaining or terminating my life.
And if that person is suffering from psychosis?
Then psychosis. I mean, the whole thing, okay. I want to deregulate it. I don't want to get into mechanics of. The bottom line is that it's not my problem to try to figure out all the minute details. I can do that because I don't want to talk about it on it. I do have proposed legislation to address that. But at the end of the day, these people were forced to exist. They didn't choose to exist. So it's really owing to their parents who brought them to existence. Why should I lose my right to medical assistance dying because some other people may suffer psychosis? You have to be competent, period. Now, who determines whether you're competent or not? That's not my responsibility.
So
I'm advocating for my own rights.
Let me jump in here. As someone who's spent years in psychosis, through religious psychosis, when you're in it, you don't know you're in it. You can't tell that you're in it, and you actually have to trust the people around you to hopefully guide you out. Because if you don't, you could cause harm to yourself or others because of the psychosis. So it's not as easy as like I can self-assess psychosis.
I don't see how. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't see how that's my problem. I just don't. I want the right.
Well, you're positing
the
the meta, and I agree with you on the meta. It's the implementation of the ideas that you're saying that is going to trip everybody up. It's the same as abortion. Like people agree on the meta or disagree on the meta of abortion, but when it comes to the actual implication and like, well, should rape people be exempt or this people be exempt? Like that's when it starts getting hairy. So I understand like where you're coming from. I just think that if you're the one implementing the plan, you should tell us the plan.
I'm not implementing the plan. I'm deregulating it. If I were to use your model and I was going to regulate it, then I would. But it's like I'm not endorsing it. I could come up with a plan for how to determine competency, but I'm not doing that. I would say
you should.
Hold on, Chris. Hold on, Chris. I want to go in order. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude. I know you're. I want to go in order because I just want to keep this conversation flowing, and I will try to keep everyone's time a little bit limited. I think BS, that's a great point, and I actually thought the same thing. Ellie, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I want to give you your chance to respond, but I didn't want Chris to overtalk you there. We're going to go to set scales next because we're going in the order that people showed up. And I just want to say really quick, I have the microphone. Nell, I've never spoken to you, I don't think. I don't know if I've chatted with you before. I think I have, but I don't think you've been in a panel. But that picture that you've got up is absolutely amazing. That is so fucking cool. But anyway, we're going to go to set scales next after LA responds here. Then we're going to go to Chris. Then we'll go to Nell and then my co-host Robin. So let's go in that order. So I'm sorry, LA, for interrupting.
Here's the thing, though. My book actually has two remedies. And so if you believe that it's in the state's interest or the public interest to force me to continue existing against my will because you want to protect the vulnerable, fine. Then you should pay for it. You should pay for my involuntary existence because it serves the state's interest and it serves your interest. I should not have to pay for my involuntary existence. So you have two options. If you don't support it, if you don't support self-ownership and the right to an unregulated determination, then you should pay the full cost of my involuntary existence. These are your interests. They have nothing to do with me. It's not my problem. I did not even choose to be in this system. So for me to have to account for everybody in the system that I did not choose to be born into, I just feel that is misplaced. If you support democracy, if you support procreation, this is your system. You should take accountability for it. I should not lose my rights because you want to maintain your system.
Let's go to set scales next. Set scales, you've got the microphone.
Well, I'm just going to say two things really briefly. Number one, in regards to the medically assisted, in regards to it being regulated, I do think that would go against Ala's position as an anarchist. And instead of government regulation or some sort of authoritarian regulation system, it should be regulated through a more natural capitalist mindset, which is basically, if this doctor sucks, no one's going to go to him. Or if these people are incompetent at doing their job, they're not going to get business because no one wants their services or products.
So you're talking about essentially privatizing it?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Seth Scales. Because I think as an anarchist, you get it in a way that other people don't.
Yeah, well, and second, I was going to say regarding anarchy, is that anarchy is objectively the most moral political system, or actually lack of political system there is, because it's the only thing that actually acknowledges that no human being has the right to dominate another human being through coercion.
I would actually agree with that.
And while you're up here, Sesko, do you want to clarify the comment that you posted earlier about coercive authority?
About what exactly? What comment?
Okay, that's fine. I just, there was some
I had mentioned, I think, yeah, I'll jog. So I had mentioned that that leadership is actually integral part of a social structure, and you responded by talking about coercion. I can't remember the other word you used, but that isn't what I was talking about. So I felt that was a little bit. I didn't know if you were responding to what I said or somebody else in the chat, but I still stand by what I said, brother. Is that I think leadership. We all have roles to play. Like I said, to my response to LA is that even the Native American tribe had a chief. Right. There was a medicine man, so on and so forth. But they have a mantra that says it takes a village to raise a squaw. Right. The idea is it takes a community to raise a child. It wasn't just the mother's responsibility. The mother has a baby and then the tribe of Native Americans go about and do their thing. No, the whole tribe works together to raise that child. It was a child of the community. And so I think that that's really important distinction to make there.
Yeah, well, when you say hierarchical leadership is what I think I heard, that almost always implies coercive system. And then the civilizations you named, Sumeria, Babylon, Rome, all these other Western and Near Eastern civilizations, they're all based in coercion. All these civilizations are based in coercion, military power, and a monopoly on knowledge and information.
I agree with that. I agree with that assessment, and I think that's why they crash every time.
And I would say fundamentally, no civilization has actually changed since the Sumerians, who are basically the blueprint for the civilization of slavery, because they're the ones to come along and say, we legitimize a centralized ruler guided by bureaucracy, blessed by some deities. And then every civilization model is followed. And before this, in pre-historical times, there was none of this.
I agree with that as well. I agree with that as well.
Just one more point, and then we'll go on to the next person. You were mentioning about how people don't have the right to leave civilization, and they're basically locked into this system. Well, that wasn't the case before civilization. It was a lot easier to leave a tribe or community you may have had disagreements with and maybe go be a nomad or go find another tribe of people or community of people to live with. But now, especially in the modern day, that's just not the case.
Yeah, I think all that's very well articulated. Thank you for sharing. Chris, I do apologize for cutting you off, brother. I'm just trying to maintain some organization so we can extract the most value out of LA's time today. And so please feel free to have the microphone, brother.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I interrupted stuff, but to that point is that I was trying to articulate but it's just I was just going on a one-word rebuttal, is that if you sincerely think that medically assisted death should be in the anarchist model, then you should game it out, then write it down, and essentially make it so that it is like a procedural, and it would be on your responsibility if you think think that type of model should be there. So because otherwise what you're doing is just complain. And that does not solve anything.
I'm already doing that. We're not going to talk about that because we already discussed I wasn't going to talk about my legislative proposal, but I'm already in the process of doing that.
Okay. Second thing for me, I live in a country that I live in Canada. So technically, under those laws, we have we have meds essentially, and but the thing is that why I'm opposed to the anarchist model is that it's a slippery slope to figure out who lives and who dies. It's easily flipped into a switch. That's why it needs to be regulated. I say
Isn't that what government?
Okay, I have a question for you. You don't live in the United States, but can you tell me where in the U.S. Constitution states have authority to force people to exist against their will?
None that
Right.
I know of.
So that's the answer to your question.
But what does that?
So
Like,
because
what are you getting at?
because there is no authority to force people to exist against their will, there is no authority to regulate it. People just assume it because they make appeal to necessity to say that the state is all powerful, all knowing, and all good. You have essentially deified the state to say that the state has unlimited authority over even life and death. I am a law-abiding citizen.
Yeah, but
I have harmed no one, and if I had committed a capital crime, my life would be terminated. But because I have not harmed anyone, I'm forced to exist in perpetuity, and that is untenable. How can you justify that? Where is the authority in the Constitution which gives the state the authority to force me to exist?
There's none, I guess, or
Right.
none is satisfactory to your understanding, I guess. But the thing is that because you're essentially by not regulating it, you're essentially having open season to euthanasia for people like me who have a disability that for at least 50 years before I was nothing but life worthy unlife by if the state dictated so. So it's like I'm sorry if yeah, that I'm kind of digging up, but it gets the like the carte blanche of like, okay, let's figure out who lives and who dies, and even masquerade murder, outright murder.
Nobody's forcing you to die, but you don't get to force me to live against my will.
How can you ensure that those people that did not sign up for medically assisted suicide, if it's in a deregulated state, that you can assure that anybody off the street have commit murder?
I object to your framing of it. Murder is the intentional killing of someone with malice or forethought. That is not the legal definition of murder. If I own my life, then it's not murder.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about somebody that decides to essentially decide, okay, I want to eliminate this person for X amount of reasons.
Okay.
Because it's convenient, and let's disguise it from meds that's not regulated.
Okay, I don't want to get in specific of my legislative.
I need clarification. I would like clarification. Can I just get clarification on Chris Moore's position? Because it sounds like he's saying that without state regulation, anyone would be able to just kidnap anyone off the street and take them to some private medically assisted center and have them offed.
I want to answer his question, though, because I think I can answer both of your questions. My proposal, which I don't want to get into detail about, it calls for a presumption of competency. So you are presumed to be competent unless proven otherwise. If there are special circumstances where someone has some incapacity, then you could present evidence of that. But because there is no evidence against me and other individuals, then we should have the right to do what we want. Do you have any evidence?
Do you know the process of meds?
Am I in the process of med?
Yes.
I don't live in Canada. We don't have that. And
do you have? Then I suggest that you do research about how the procedure on how medically assisted suicides is. I think that's the process.
I wrote a whole book about it, so of course I've done research. We don't have it in the United States.
Okay, and
the word is not MAID, it's called MAID.
Oh.
So I think you should research the correct term.
All right, let's move on to the next person because we're starting to back up. We've got a lot of people joining. Chrissy, thank you very much, and we will go work our way around. I don't want to leave anything hanging or unsettled.
I'll talk to you later about that then. Okay.
All right. Thank you for joining, Chris. I appreciate it. And I do appreciate you guys. I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the show, but you guys are already doing it because you guys are savvy with how this all works. But I appreciate you guys couching the language to try to stay within YouTube's terms of service. Nell, you're next up on stage. And again, I love that picture. That is absolutely amazing. Probably the coolest picture that's ever been on my channel so far. Feel free to have the stage now.
Oh, thank you. And it's a picture of one of my D&D characters. And we crossed paths, I think, 1 or 2 times on Scott's channel, if you remember Scott.
Of course, absolutely. Scott and Sophia.
Yes.
Yes. Despite our differences, I still love them both as brother and sister.
Yeah. So I'd say that there were 2 interesting points that, there's the point of, should we have assisted euthanasia, and and if we can't have that, should we LA brought up another interesting point of should we be deciding who gets to procreate or not, and this all seems to center around competency. And so to me it's like there's a lot of points I agree with LA, like that we should have, like I do believe assisted euthanasia should be, or death with dignity should be allowed, but like going to the like choosing who gets to procreate or not, like I agreed to a point of like, or I agree in principle that like there's a lot of parents who shouldn't be parents, that they abuse their kids, and it's terrible that anyone can just procreate and do what they want with their children. But all at the same time, though, it seems like it's a really messy thing to get into, of like, if we're deciding who can, if we're deciding who is competent enough to have, children, like that can get really, a slippery slope of, let's say, who is deciding who is competent and not. And it's like, and if let's say, just take the United States, for example, where currently, the MAGA movement, Christian nationalists are in power, and they, if they had the power to decide who is competent or not, and then it's like, they could target, black people or trans people, and they could chemically castrate them. So to me, it's like, in principle, I agree. There's a lot of messy details to iron out, so that we're not going after the wrong people. And it's like, then I don't know if it's practically possible to implement such a thing.
Well, family, I'm absolutely on board with what you're saying, and there are really stark and frightening dangers to what we're talking about once we really step back from the situation. However, I don't think that fundamentally, as B.S. Lewis said, that on the meta, I don't think that anybody can make a logical argument against it once the case is laid out. The sticky business gets into implementation, right? Who determines competency, as B.S. has said. And I think that's really, and like what you're talking about, the ethical side of this is really important, because we still see so much prejudice. And you've, are a great example of that. You've suffered a lot of that. And firsthand, we've all suffered prejudice. The truth is, every one of us has been judged unfairly for one reason or another. And this is just something that is an unfortunate part of the reality that we live in. But I believe that we have the ability to change that by educating people on the value, the intrinsic value that people have in their own lives, right? In their own experiences, and fairness and equality, and what I talk about with objective morality. But that's not necessarily happening right now, right? So we have to be realistic about when we talk about the implementation. And I really am glad you guys are bringing that up, because I think that if we as a community can get past the hurdle of saying, is this fundamentally right or wrong, we could say, okay, fundamentally, we all agree actually that it does make sense despite some obvious issues. Now, what do we do about it? And when we start putting our heads together, we're a group of very intelligent people. We can overcome those issues, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's like, I would want something like, like I said, when it comes to the voluntary euthanasia, it's like I agree with LA, but I also share Chris's concerns. It's like we don't want this turning into a eugenics project. We don't want another Nazi Germany happening.
I just want to clarify that I don't actually support competency tests for those who want to procreate. I was just pointing out the double standard that anybody can procreate. There's no regulation on the front end, but on the back end, now there's all these concerns about who's competent to terminate their own life. Like,
okay, I get what you're saying. Okay. Well, I mean, to me, it's like I understand. Like I'm trying to come at it because it's like I get where how you want to. You think the best solution is deregulation, and Chris is saying, we need regulation. Is there any sort of middle ground that we can get to with that?
Well, then any regulation that you want to impose on me for my right to terminate my own life, then you should accept for yourself and your quote unquote right to procreate. So if I don't get rights on the back end, then you shouldn't get any rights on the front end. Maybe the state should be just as oppressive in your decision to procreate. Maybe I should get a say in that too, because we're protecting the vulnerable. We're protecting the people who might be abused and these innocent people. So because I have a stake in protecting the innocent, then I should use that to wiggle my way into your bedroom and tell you whether you can procreate.
I was going to call on Pastor D next. It's unfortunate they left. Pastor D, I'm sorry if it was getting to be too long to get to you. You were next in line. You're welcome to come back if you want to join the conversation. I don't know if that's just a glitch or something, or if you had something else to do. But since you did take off, Robin is now next in line. And Robin, for those of you who may not know, Robin is not only a moderator on this channel, but she's really a big part of what this channel does. It's always so nice to have her be here. Oh, Pastor D is here. Robin, I'm going to let...
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that cool? Because he was here. Okay, yeah. So, okay, we'll stop with the sunshine up your ass for right the second, and we'll go to Pastor D. Pastor D, it's so good to see you, brother. I know you and I probably have some fundamental disagreements about religion. I think we've had a couple interesting conversations, but I really do enjoy listening to you, and I love your passion and your sense of humor. So I'm really glad that you stopped by today.
Yeah, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, right?
Yeah, the best line so far that you've ever said to me is, "You're going to come find me and save my soul," or I can't remember how you put it exactly, but it was quite ominous sounding.
Yeah, a little tongue-in-cheek. I want to address what Mr. Lewis had to say, because he is handicapped and so am I. It's a personal choice.
I'm not handicapped, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. The person that was handicapped, I didn't catch the icon.
Oh, that's me.
No, I have bipolar, but it's not a handicap.
Okay.
Well, I have cerebral palsy, basically. So yeah.
Anyway. Okay. It's a personal choice. It doesn't mean that everybody that's handicapped is going to get euthanized. No, this is a choice that you make. And, like any choice that you make, if you go rock climbing and you don't put the cleat in the right crevice of the rock, down you go. Well, you're free to make that choice and make a mistake. And like rock climbing, if you take your own life and it was a mistake, then there's a lot of things in life that you can make mistakes at, and the consequences are dire. So if I'm kind of addressing this disability thing, it's two-pronged. Number one, it's not coming after people with disabilities. If people with disabilities want to live, that's their choice. But if able-bodied people don't want to live, that's their choice. And if they make a mistake and euthanize themselves by mistake, there's a lot of choices in life that are dangerous. And I see people doing it all the time.
People choose to use highly addictive drugs and alcohol, literally injecting poison into their bodies. And if people knew what was in the drugs on street drugs, I mean, Jesus Christ, that's just a fact. People do it all the time.
And I find it
Yeah.
amazing that people claim to believe in free will, but yet you don't believe in free will when it comes to your existence. So if I'm born into existence against my will, and I'm forced to continue existing against my will, where does the free will actually come into play?
Yeah, I'll share my story again. I'm sure many of you heard it. I suffered a spinal cord injury in late 98, early 99. Spent 6 months in a hospital doing rehab, another year and a half out of the hospital. I can walk, but I'm pretty obviously disabled. I tried to take my life twice. Clearly, I took a whole bottle of pills, and I woke up every time in the hospital the next morning, barfing and shitting charcoal. And it was clear what my choice was, but the medical establishment, nope, you're sick. And then I had to spend, 2 weeks in some psych ward, which cost me $30,000 because my insurance wouldn't cover it. Insurance doesn't cover self-harm. I made my choice pretty clear, but it was interfered with. So the medical establishment will always err on the side of keeping you alive. And their measurement for keeping you alive is basically a pulse and a respiration, not quality of life, quantity of life. And I've seen that way too many times.
I just want to just really quick jump in here and thank you personally. I think I posted a comment maybe on LA's channel to you.
You did.
The fact that you're willing to share that story, because it puts you in a state of vulnerability about something that's already obviously very traumatic. And I think it's so important for people to hear what you have to say. It's, you mentioned the Hippocratic Oath. You didn't articulate it that way, but that's what you're talking about, the Hippocratic Oath, right? That do no harm. Well, who are they to determine what is harmful in this situation, right? You're literally going against the person's will. Is that not harmful?
Yes. But they think you're mentally ill and you've made a mistake, so they're gonna, after they sustain your life or revive you, then you have to mandatorily go into a psych ward and get treatment that's absolutely ineffective for most people, because most of those people have been there several times.
Pastor D, can you talk about the medical and psychiatric bills that you had after all that?
Yeah, one time I went in there, the bill was $30,000 and this was 1990, late 1990, early $2,000. And then the other time I went in there, it was $15,000 because insurance will not cover self-harm. So that's everything to do with self-harm. So if you get psychiatric treatment because you tried to self-harm, then it disqualifies it all the way down the line, even though you should be considered by their standards psychiatrically unhealthy and needing treatment, which should be covered. You see the hypocrisy there?
So in other words, it was profitable for them to force you to exist against your will.
Absolutely. It was profitable when my grandfather died. He went in the hospital. The prognosis was he might live 2 days, he might live 2 weeks, but he's going to die. We don't know exactly when. And instead of peacefully putting the man down, especially after he became unconscious and he was breathing like, they plugged him into every machine known to man so they could extract his life and extract money for the next week, keeping him artificially alive.
So would you say that you were a vulnerable person whose interests should have been protected?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
So would you say that you were a vulnerable person whose interests should have been protected? Because they're always talking about the vulnerable children, the vulnerable elderly, and people who can't make decisions for yourself. Like, would you say that you were just as vulnerable as these elderly people, or people who, you were? I'm assuming you weren't even conscious. They forced you to ingest coal or charcoal, and
they injected it in me.
So you were completely vulnerable at that time, right?
I was unconscious, yes.
So I would like I don't know what their response is, that they don't seem to care about the vulnerable.
No, their assumption is if you want to off yourself, then there's something wrong with you. That's the baseline the medical establishment goes off of. Is
Pastor,
if you harm yourself, there's something wrong with you. So we must treat you. You're
Pastor,
wrong.
Do you regret making that decision?
No. I mean, what do you mean? Trying to take my life?
Yes.
No. I regret waking up. And then I tried it twice. And now I've just learned that I don't have enough guts to put a pew-pew to my temple. I just can't do it. I can't imagine doing that. The mess I'd leave, the pain it would cause. The only way I can imagine doing it is taking pills.
So it comes down to the mess?
It comes down to the pain and the mess. And the fear of...
Would the loved ones not suffer the same pain through pills?
No, because you basically go to sleep first, and then with the pills I have.
But would it actually would it make a difference for you to have medical assistance? Would that make it easier?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where I've seen that the first thing they do is they put you to sleep. And they give you like 3 injections when I've seen it done to criminals, where they put you to death and they inject you. One shot puts you to sleep, one shot paralyzes your muscles, and the other one stops your heart. I mean, once you're asleep, it's painless.
Yeah, that's. I've actually had some pretty serious medical problems over the last couple of years. Now, fortunately, I'm actually recovering quite well and starting to get back into pretty decent shape for an old man. But yeah, I've been on some pretty crazy stuff, and I've tried some very heavy drugs in my past, made a lot of mistakes in that regard too. And when it comes to what they can do at the hospital, you would never know. You would just literally just go to sleep, have great dreams, great, what I mean? I'm not advising people do this. I want to be very clear about that.
No, we're not advising. I'm sharing an experience.
Right. I just wanted to clarify for the audience and stuff. I'm not saying this is what people should do. I think there's actually a way to overcome a lot of things. However, I am advocating for the choice. That's what's most important here.
Absolutely.
Robin, I want to go to Robin, and now I can start saying all these nice things about Robin here, about how much of a support she's been to the channel. She keeps the chat in line, and also sometimes here at the live panels, she's also kind of helped keep things. Sometimes things get a little heated. I understand, and I'm still trying to figure out, being fairly new at this, what's that fine line between regulating the conversation and basically micromanaging it, or just letting it kind of flow organically. And it's difficult when you get a lot of people talking and having ideas to share. I am very grateful that everyone, for the most part, has tried to maintain civility and respect. But I know some of the topics we talk about here, they do get emotional. So for all that, I appreciate Robin's efforts, and please subscribe to her channel and support what she's doing over there as well. So Robin, why don't you take the microphone, sister?
Hey, thank you for all that. First, I want to say thank you for this conversation. I do have a friend, David Warnock. I don't know if some of you may know him if you're in this community. He suffers from ALS. He's, which is a very, an eventual, end, and pretty painful and suffering end. And he has planned to go to a different country for the end there. Fortunately, he has had the slow progressing type of the disease, and so he's been 5 years since he was diagnosed, which is like unheard of in some cases. So, but I always think of him when this conversation comes up, because he is having to plan to leave the country and go somewhere else to be able to take care of this, so that he doesn't spend his last moments suffering. That is inevitable. There's not a good ending to this so far. I think that it's really beyond that right there. I've never sat around and thought much on moral impositions of that, positions of that. I think that there's a big conversation that needs to happen. I don't necessarily disagree that people in certain circumstances should be allowed to do that. I just think that I'm sort of like Chris, though. I kind of think that we just we sort of have to regulate it somehow, because I feel like that, and I don't know. It just seems like that would be a bad idea to not regulate it. And that may be incorrect thinking on my part. I do think that on as far as the antinatalism and stuff, I think that we can show in societies, other societies, where empowering women, allowing them to make better choices on when they have children, and making sure that we have medical. I think that universal health care should be something that every human has. I don't think that that should ever cost somebody, like you were talking about, it costs you for what you had to go through. And that's horrible. That is horrible that we do that to people. So I think that if we provide health care with people, and we empower women to make better choices about reproduction, that we end up with better parenting plans. We end up with more responsible people who are choosing to have children, and when they can afford them, and when they're available, to give them the things that they need throughout life, like education and food and stuff, to prepare them for an adult life. So I think that all of that is a good start to some of this. And I think that we are way behind on getting some of that going.
I'd like to bring something to everyone's attention here really quick, and then we'll cycle back around because I'd like to hear it. I think B.S. Lewis is really onto something here. I agree with what the sentiment is, I think, overall with the group and regulation. I actually strongly agree with that. I think it's extremely important because of the dangers, and I think Seth talked about that. It's really important to think about that. There are serious dangers. We've seen so much prejudice and racism and things that are happening right now that this could get out of hand really quickly. And there is a lot of coercion. There could be an interest in motivating people. If people are financially benefited from doing this, then there's going to be a motivation that just becomes how would I say that? Let me just show this to people. So right here, and I'm not saying this is how we should necessarily do it. Okay. I just want to just kind of read this out to people as one example. This is how medical assistance in dying in Canada allows eligible adults to request medical assistance to end their life under strict legal and clinical safeguards. Eligibility criteria. To request MAID in Canada, an individual must meet all of the following criteria: be 18 years or older and capable of making healthcare decisions for themselves, have a grievous and irremediable medical condition, which may include serious and incurable illness, disease, or disability. A fatal or terminal condition is not required. Make a voluntary request. That is not influenced by external pressure. Provide informed consent after receiving all necessary information about their condition, prognosis, and available treatment options. Meet any provincial or territorial residency requirements, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about that. Methods of MAID: clinical administered MAID. A physician or nurse practitioner directly administers a substance that causes death. Self-administered MAID. A physician or nurse practitioner provides or prescribes a drug that the eligible person takes themselves to bring about death. And there's more to that, obviously, if anybody wants to look at that. They just pulled that up. I don't even know. There's sources on here that you could look into. Well, we don't want to look at that bullshit.
Thanks for pulling that up.
We never really talked about the disposal rights test, but just quickly, the disposal rights test is whoever owns property, and according to John Locke, your life is property. Whoever controls disposal has ownership. So if you don't have disposal rights, and it's basically being determined by the state based on state imposed criteria, then you are not the owner of your life. So if all these people who want regulations, what they're essentially saying is that you don't own your life, the state owns you, and the state gets to decide how you want to dispose of, how you're allowed to dispose your life. And if that is the case, then they should pay to maintain your involuntary existence. Again, these are not your interests. These are the state's interests. This is the public's interest. And so why should you have to pay to maintain a life against your will? If that's what they want, then they should have to pay for it. So if it makes you feel uncomfortable that I should have my right to terminate my own life, then you should pay all of my bills. You should pay my student loans, my healthcare costs. you should pay for everything because you are forcing me to exist against my will. And I have decided on an option that would actually eliminate all of my problems, but you're preventing me from exercising that right. So you should address all of my problems.
You also have to account for essentially the American psyche that's baked into capitalism, though, because it's basically the capitalist system of America is that you basically, if you have money, everything's fine. If you don't, so sad for you. But that's how to the point of universal health care and stuff like that, like women's rights, and even contraception and all these fights in the background this is basically not the root cause, but the inevitability of all those misguided, not policies, but it's like the refusal to acknowledge the progression of how other societies, the merits of how societies elsewhere have decided to, to take care of their citizens. Because, like for me, I don't really have to worry about healthcare so much because it's distributed through the provinces, but like I can just show up at the clinic, open clinic, or ER, or even my doctor, or even the medicine. It won't cost me an arm and a leg, so to speak, and stuff like that. And those incremental stuff like that basically, it's like I said, it's not the root cause, but it's just like take away those symptoms of your grievances, and I would say half of it goes away. Anyway, sorry, I'll just shut up right now.
Can I ask Robin a question? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. That way, your show.
For everyone who supports state-imposed regulations, do you believe that the state actually owns us? Because if the state doesn't own us, then it has no legitimate authority to regulate life in the first place. But if you do believe that, can you explain the basis for state ownership, that we don't own our lives? Clearly, we don't own our lives, that we can't terminate them without the state's consent. So the state can terminate your life if you commit a capital crime, but if you're a law-abiding citizen, then you can't terminate it without the state's approval. So how do you rectify that? How do you rectify this enslavement that even if you do support the right, so-called right to medical assistance in dying, that it has to be at the state's permission, that you can't do it on your own accord? You have to go to the state and ask for permission to terminate your own life. Can you explain how you can own your life and not have the right to terminate it?
Who's the state? LA.
The state apparently are you people whoever supports the state.
We
it's
are
the collective, the people who vote.
Are you part of the state?
No, I don't. No, I don't believe so. No.
You don't.
Also,
pay taxes?
The medical associations are part of that too.
Chris, you're interrupting.
Right,
Chris.
They are. They absolutely are.
So, are you paying taxes, LA?
Against my will, yes, I am.
So you're part of the state against your will.
Right.
So I don't understand your argument.
I don't support the state, though. If I would like to dismantle the state.
Stop paying taxes.
Then he goes to jail.
Well, the thing is, if you stop paying taxes, they're going to have people either come and kidnap you and lock you in a cage, or they're going to seize your actual tangible property.
That's fine. Then he can fairly say they instead of us.
The IRS,
they are they.
The IRS or agents of the state, people like that, cops.
Yeah. I'm saying detach yourself from the they or from the us and become a they. Become a
I do agree. I actually do agree with what BS is saying here, and I want to let BS continue. Let's try not to overtalk too much here. Let each person finish their statements here, because it just makes it more functional for the conversation. But I agree with what BS is saying, and I don't mean to be I'm not trying to be overly critical here, but when we say you owe, it really, the finger pointing I don't think is necessarily necessary or productive for the conversation, because I think we're talking about an entity rather than an individual person that's on this panel per se. So just for the sake of the conversation not being inflammatory, would it be more acceptable to refer to what we're actually talking about, which is the state owes as opposed to you owe moving forward?
And my point would just be to implement the change from within, change the us, the they to the us, and get your proposal to be popular opinion.
So basically just collectivism and join the Borg collective and sacrifice your individuality.
You're already there. If you're paying the taxes, you're already part of it.
Right, but the reason why I'm using the word they is because when they support the regulations which force me to exist against my will, they are deploying violence against me to force me to submit to their will. And they are doing it. And that's the whole chapter. I believe that's chapter 5, how the public supports for enslavement. So they're complicit. It's not just the state, it's the public as well.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of death by cop?
Let's not bring that up because there's
no, because that's a very important point, because it would exactly be getting to your means, wouldn't it?
Okay, I'm assuming you have heard the allegations about. Is that why you brought that up?
Yeah, because you actually, your plan would be to have somebody implement self-harm, and if they can't do it, then they're going to force the cops to do it for them.
That's a lie. The person who said that took that out of context. That's not what I was saying.
I said that. I never heard anything about that.
Okay,
that's the logical outcome of this.
And then a cop shoots you in the spinal cord and you're paralyzed, not dead. Just a hypothetical.
Or they do and they finish the job. That's a hypothetical.
That doesn't address, unless I'm missing something, but it doesn't address ultimately the core question is it morally justifiable to want to have the choice? And I think I'd like to just really quickly to see where we're at with the panel on that question, and then go back into the nuances of how to implement it. So if I could just really quickly get a yes or no out of each panel member, just so I can see where we're at with the meta, the overall, if in a perfect scenario, in a perfect world, and we don't have to get into that right this second, just is it ethically better, morally better to give people the option? I know LA, I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but what do you say? Yes or no?
Yes.
BS, yes or no?
Yes.
Set?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes, hopefully.
Nell?
Yes.
And Pastor?
Absolutely.
And Robin?
Yes.
Okay, in the chat, if you would be willing to type a Y or an N, because I'd love to see what you guys think about it as well. Is at the fundamental level, the meta, is it more ethical to give people a humane option? And then you guys go ahead and get back into the conversation about the nuances, because the nuances are important, because I think we all obviously, at least on this panel, agree that we can see when we step back, the humane option and the ethical option is the correct answer. So how do we make that happen most effectively to maintain the ethics? The whole thing is justified by ethics, the ethical position. If we do it in an unethical manner, it defeats it. It becomes self-refuting, right? So go ahead and continue the conversation. Thank you for participating in that.
Can I ask Robin a question? Can I ask Robin a quick question? Your friend with the ALS, did his or her parents, I think you said it was a his, before they laid down and had their fun, did they carefully screen their genetics and their family history to see if their genetics were compatible?
I would not think so. I mean, I don't know their parents. I don't know their parents, but I don't know what that noise is.
I don't think it's coming.
Noise. Everybody mute up if we're not talking.
I don't think that I think that probably he's older than I am even, so I would say that probably we didn't even know much about the disease at the time. But I get yeah, it would be wise to not be able to point to that and determine who was at a risk of that sort of thing. Yes.
And it may be that there's no way of detecting it, but I can't tell you the number of parents that have no clue what lurks in their family genetics.
I agree.
And they have a bigger no clue when they combine their genes, what they're going to get.
I mean,
and medicine has progressed so far.
Yeah, I have 2 children, and I did not do that. So, and came along like he's older than I am, so I'm sure that, and I would say that he probably, his parents definitely did not do that. And let me say something too. I wanted to get to the anarchy thing. Can I say something else? Objective ethics for y'all.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, the anarchy thing. I have listened to a lot of anarchy arguments, and I just I have not ever been convinced that it would not turn out to be just whoever had the power or the ability to take control of society, that it would just be a more might makes right. And so, like when BS was talking earlier, I kind of agree with what BS was saying about we are the state, like in our republic, like we are the state. Now I know our government has gone off the rails slightly, but I think that if we, I feel like that in a more perfect union, we would actually have more control of that. And that's one reason why I push for like compulsory voting. I think that everybody should be involved in voting, not just the people who are motivated to go out and instill their will on people. And
I don't know. I think voting is an act of violence. And the reason why I say it's not me, because I never get my will. Any policy positions I take, they're usually unpopular. I have never, since I've been an adult, a critically thinking adult, I have never gotten my will on a single policy that I support. So I don't believe that the government represents my interests at all. I believe the state is my oppressor.
I mean, I think that not voting is an act of violence by that logic too. Then, like, I mean, like, we, like I said, we're humans. I don't know of a system. I haven't heard of a system yet that I think is like going to be uncorruptible, or is not going to be, skewed some way by human people that involved in it. But I think that probably, with what we have to work with, that's probably the best way to go through there. I mean, I don't know any, and like I said, anarchy is not nothing that, like, it just seems like it'd be so easy for any bad actor to take over in anarchy, because you would have no actually way of protecting people from that.
And right. So I'm not saying that everybody else has to be an anarchist. I'm just saying that I don't consent to this system. And so I'm making that express. So anything that the public supports is being done against my will. And so I just want to clarify the question though earlier for the people in the audience that it's not just supporting the right to medical assistance, because most people support it for those who are terminally ill. Do you support the right to medical assistance in dying for those who are not terminally ill?
I think that I think that probably, yes, I probably could come there if I thought that it was something like, I don't necessarily agree with making people who don't want to be here. So I don't think it should be easy peasy decision to make, but I think that, yeah, I think I could probably get to where that I would be okay with that. Yeah,
but it's easy peasy for them to procreate, to put you here.
I mean, I can't help that. That's not in my control. Like, I think that, like I said, I think we should empower women to be able to have more autonomy over their reproductive issues. And I think that we can point to other societies where doing that very thing right there and educating women on, and like providing with birth control and things has actually resulted in better parenting decisions. And I think that we have to work within what we have. I don't think there's going to be we have a big society. There's a lot of people on the planet, and like here in the United States, like you said, we have to vote to get our way. But I think that that's the best way to try to get things done is to. But I do, and I know this don't have anything to do with voting, but I think we all should have to vote. I think that everybody should be voting instead of just motivated people who want to enforce their will on other people. And I think that's what motivates a lot of people to vote, and the rest of us are being forced upon by those people.
I don't know if you have your own channel, but I would actually be interested in having a full discussion about that specific topic.
Okay, that'd be great. I would love to.
Yeah, she absolutely has her own channel, and I'd actually love to host that conversation if you'd like to do it here. But I also would encourage you to check out Robin's channel. Everybody, I always put a link to Robin's channel in every single video I do, actually. And just so everybody knows, I think most people who watch my show already know this. If anybody joins this live conversation, and you're not like some kind of asshole or somebody who's actively trying to like be mean to me or something like that, then I will include a link to your channel. Even if we have disagreements, I'll include a link to your channel in the description of the video. So anybody watching the videos later or participating in the conversation will be able to find and communicate, hopefully respectfully, with anybody who's here. So there's a link to LA's channel already in the description. I did that preemptively, as well as Robin's, because I do that every time I post a video. So BS Lewis's link will go in there. I don't know if Set Scales, Pastor D, have a channel. I don't think Chris does. But if you guys do have a channel, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to promote you guys and network with everybody and put a link to your channels in the description of the video. Okay.
Yeah. And to answer LA's question, I would agree with him that, it shouldn't just be for a grievous or, a terminal medical condition. It's like I would treat it much like how no fault divorce is treated. It's like you don't have to have a good reason. It's like as long as you are, like I said, this is probably where the small amount of regulation would take place, is as long as you are in a right state of mind or competent or however you want to phrase it, you should be able to end your own life. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna throw a wrench in here. What about parents of a young child?
Parent? Okay, so parental rights. Here we go. No.
Are they should they be held to a higher responsibility because they have responsibilities?
Oh, okay. I see. I think what you're saying. So, like, can a parent just be like, "Oh, I'm going to off my life and leave this"?
Because they'll be dropping the kid off into the system, quote unquote, by doing the offing of themselves.
Well, my book actually addresses that. I don't believe that parents should have that right, and I'm not saying that it should be a positive right, but I don't believe that anybody should assist them. If you have children, then nobody should assist you in terminating your life.
Just throwing it out there.
That was
Robin,
a good thing to bring up.
What would you do, Robin, if one of you, I'm assuming the kids are closer to adult, and they're both healthy, and one just says, "Look, I don't like it here. I'm done." How would you react? It's a hypothetical. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but this gets into this parental thing. Or if you don't want to answer. Yeah, okay. I'll mute.
Yeah. For the autonomy argument, it seems to me that we're going to try to divorce ourselves from any responsibility and connections to any other people. But that's just not realistic, in my opinion.
Right, but they don't have any responsibilities towards us. It's every man for himself. It's not as if anybody's going to help you when you have problems. You have to figure out how you're going to navigate your life. You have to pay your bills. Nobody's going to hold your hand. And yet, when you want to make an individual decision, now all of a sudden it's, oh, what about the collective?
Well, that I'm not saying the collective. I'm saying, say you decide that it's your right that you can have kids. Now you have a responsibility to those kids. Do you not?
Right. Right. I don't believe that those who have
Not
children.
necessarily.
Okay, that's where the discrepancy is going to come into play. Go at it, Pastor D in LA. I want to see you guys duke it out. Parental rights.
I'm sorry, for which?
The right
I
to
think-
off yourself with kids.
I don't believe
Oh.
that.
No, if you have kids, you can't off yourself because you brought them here, and as a parent, especially until they're 18, you owe it to them to be there for them, because parent will be a huge role in the kid's life, especially up until 18.
Well, what if let me throw a hypothetical out there, because I actually disagree. Because I like to be as consistent as possible. What if the baby's a crack baby, right? Or has fetal alcohol syndrome or something like that, because the mother is such a fucking degenerate.
I'm clipping this.
Oh, Jesus. Hey, brother, it won't be the first time I got been taken out of context. And the people who are out there, you know who you are out there, you fuckers. But no, I've got no shame. It's, what if something, if you bring a child into the world that never should have been brought into this world ethically, that's the problem with the whole argument when it comes to children, because I don't know how to implement all this stuff. I honestly don't, which is why I don't talk a lot about it, because like you guys are doing right now, you're bringing up very fair and relevant questions and objections to the implementation. And I absolutely respect the intellect and the humanity in all of you, because you're all thinking from the heart and trying to attach the brain to the heart right now with this conversation. And it's so important, because this is where the work is going to get done if we're going to make any progress in this. And I do advocate for MAID personally. I do think it is the right thing. So now the next step for me is figuring out how do we actually implement this, because the children, that's great pushback right there. What about the children? Well, like I said before, I don't know if everybody was here or not to hear it, but I've heard that objection before. And my feeling is that we deal with children if their parents are terminated in a car crash. We don't just say, oh, too bad for the kids. We have a program. Now, I don't think I've been through the foster system, and I can tell you that their foster system needs to be completely revamped, just like our justice system, our criminal system. I've been through both of them, and they both need to be completely revamped. But we don't need to just get rid of them. We need to fix them and make them better. So if we're willing to say, okay, we want to provide a good life for children whose parents have died of natural causes, then that same principle must apply to all children who don't have parents. So it's not the parents' duty, because I don't believe in duties. We give rights to people. We aren't born with rights. The reason I argue for objective morality is because we have logical reasons to function as a community, but that's all got to be justified by personal autonomy and equality. And you can't say, well, I don't support abortion. I support a woman's right to choose what to do with her body. Right. And I understand those are technically the same thing, but it's what angle are you approaching it from? If I respect a person's right to autonomy, then that's the principle. And you have to build up from that principle, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think this is when abortion meets euthanasia, and it becomes one of the most difficult moral topics to mankind.
Agreed.
I think that when you procreate, you voluntarily forfeit. It's not that I'm doing it. You voluntarily forfeit your right to opt out, because you accepted that responsibility.
Not if it wasn't voluntary.
And I'm not saying that you don't have the right to do it. What I'm saying is that those who are assisting should not help you do that.
But what if a woman is sexually assaulted and has a child she didn't ask for?
That changes everything.
Well, my personal opinion is that she probably should get an abortion.
And they didn't allow her to? The state wouldn't let her?
Well,
there's plan B.
State won't allow that too. So yeah, that's the problem.
We have insane right-wing conservatives who actually do want, who literally
this
are
is crazy.
Yeah, it does get really sticky. It does get really deep, but that's good. That's fair. That's a fair response. What if a woman is assaulted against her will? What are we going to do? If we don't have a principle in place, then how do we justify any claims at all?
Even if that very act is what drives her to the suicide herself.
Well, my question though to that whole principle thing though, isn't there like always exceptions that we need to consider?
Yeah, we're not going to make everybody happy.
That's the problem. You're not going to that if you don't. In an ideal situation, of course, we could account for every single exception. I do think that's true. However, that's impossible because every individual has their own concept and idea that you just can't account for everything. It's literally impossible. So the only thing we can rely on is, in my opinion, that the most functional thing we should rely on is having an established principle. And when it comes to the question of ethics, we start with two people on an island, right? If I steal all your coconuts, you're not going to trust me anymore. So we know that stealing is wrong. Now we can extrapolate that out into 8.5 billion people, and that principle still holds up. So I think that the principle foundation is the way we should go. We have a axiomatic building process, right?
But so no, I get what you're saying, but what I mean by exception, like, you know, we have like that there's the principle that, you know, we in general we shouldn't kill people, you know, and if we do, it's considered murder, but it's not considered murder if it's in self-defense. You know, the exception is the self-defense, right? And so like let's take bodily autonomy for examples. Like to me, it's like, you know, that should be a foundational, you know, right for everyone. That's why I'm pro-choice when it comes to, you know, abortion. It's like women should have their bodily autonomy, and you know, but then we can look at, you know, the next, like if we were to look at public health though, when it comes to vaccines, then all of a sudden we can make the exception of like, oh well, maybe we should be more of a collectivist mindset when it comes to vaccines, and so we're going to, you know, not hold bodily autonomy so high in that regard. That's like the sort of like exception I'm talking about here.
That's a really great example of the vaccine. I was thinking about some other analogies, but I think yours is actually landing a little harder, the vaccine analogy. That's actually a really good analogy, really good pushback right there. But the problem is I think the principle I would rely on, even including the vaccines, it still holds the principle of autonomy, is that my rights end where they say my rights end where your rights begin, right? Or so that's, I have the right to personal autonomy, but I don't have the right to light my own house on fire because I may catch my neighbor's house on fire, right? So the same thing applies to vaccines. I could have a right to not take a vaccine when there's a major disease that's traveling all throughout the community, but the community has a right to be protected from me, right? So isolation, unfortunately, because same thing with anything else. We have a responsibility to put axe murderers in prison and take away their autonomy. Even though we say personal autonomy is the foundation of it, that's the principle, we still have to say, okay, where does that, what does infringe on that principle? Well, if someone else is infringing on people's autonomy because they're an axe murderer, we have to defend justice. That's why objective morality is best understood through the virtues, or the golden mean. What is actually vengeance? What is unnecessary or unwarranted mercy? Justice lies in the middle. Justice requires justification. That's the root of the word, which means treating like cases alike, and so on and so forth.
But that's my objection to procreation, that somebody like my parents' right to procreate creates a duty for me to exist. So it's completely asymmetrical. And yeah, their rights end where my rights start. What about my right to not exist?
Everyone, this has been an outstanding conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think we've got a lot to chew on here. And I like to give everybody a final thought before we just go, and then I'll give a final statement myself. And given the number of people that are here, that could take another 15 to who knows how many minutes. And I also want to give LA the final word so that he can have a closing remark, plug his channel, plug his book, and all that kind of good stuff. So let's do it let's do it kind of in a reverse order, working our way back through to BS Lewis and then to LA myself. So Pastor D, can we start with you, and then we'll just work our way back around the room? You have the final thought, or your final thoughts, and tell us if you're any projects you're working on, your channel or whatever. Let me know if I need to get a link put in the description. Okay, the floor is yours, brother.
Okay. No channel. No channel. I support LA 100%. I follow all his stuff. I like what he has to say. I hope, if nothing else comes out of antinatalism, it makes existing parents and parents to be take this act of creating life much more seriously. And maybe if we do that, future generations will be less fucked up. Because it's just way too easy to get drunk and have fun on a Saturday night. And the next thing you know, wham, bam, thank you, Sam. And I don't think antinatalism will take over humanity. But if we just drill it in parents' heads, all the severities and all the stories that are out there of people like wish they were never born, and there's a ton of them, then maybe this procreation thing won't be looked at so selfishly by parents. I want a kid. I want a family. And they can see, hey, I'm not just creating a cute little kid, and I'm not just creating my little family. I'm creating a life that will have to wage slave, possibly get injured, possibly get seriously ill, possibly get old, and die. And for the religious people out there, think about your kid roasting in eternal hellfire forever. And if you're a Christian or an Abrahamic religion, you can't just that doesn't happen, because it does. You know, Jesus talked about it. You know, the Abrahamic religions all believe in it, with the possible exception of the Jews. Anyways, that's my spiel. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say what an honor it's been and a pleasure it's been, Pastor, to have you join the conversation. I would have been really disappointed if you didn't try to condemn somebody to hell. So I'm glad you followed through and you're consistent with that.
You're all going to hell.
Save my soul, brother. No, you know, I'm not going to do it. No, I do really, I really encourage people to go back and rewatch the show, especially if you just want to. There's so many good points that were brought up in this show, but I'd really like people to listen to what Pastor D had to say, to share his own story when he joined the panel, because, you know, it's one thing for us to use these hypotheticals and we can engage in this logical argument and stuff like that. But when people talk about their own stories, it carries so much more punch. And I just really am grateful that Pastor D was willing to expose himself, because it is exposing yourself, you know, this to strangers, and to put yourself up to be judged by others. And so I have a great deal of respect and for the courage that Pastor D showed today to do that.
Can I add one more thing? Just one more thing. I'm sorry. I know.
Absolutely.
I'm getting to the very back nine of my life. You know, I'm 65. You know, I might live into my 80s. I hope not. But, you know, every time my heart races a little fast, or, you know, some abnormality happens to my body, I'm thinking, is this it? Is this it? Am I having a heart attack? I'm terrified of dying. Naturally. I know I tried it before, but that was kind of under my conditions. Think about your kid, not just as a cute little kid or a teenager or a young adult. Go to an old age home. Go to Alzheimer's ward. Go to a memory care ward, and see those people sad. And there's a good chance you're creating that. If not, you're creating a human who will reach the end of their life and be terrified of dying. Okay, sorry.
Thank you for sharing. Now, I know we're getting into the end of it. I see JG. I don't think I've spoken to you before. I'm going to bring you up on the panel here. Yeah, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't know if I remember speaking to you before or not. And I'm so sorry. I've meet too many people, but we're doing closing statements right now. And I don't know how much of the conversation you've had a chance to even hear. But what I'll do is, since you joined us, I'll go ahead and give you an opportunity to do an introduction and a final statement all at the same time. Please don't do or say anything creepy that's going to get my stream shut down. Okay, brother? You've got the floor, Jay.
Yeah, I got the floor for the final statement. No, but I was just I didn't know what you guys were doing. I wasn't listening. Sorry. But I was interested in objective ethics for sure. If that's your position from a non-Christian worldview, I'm interested in hearing that sometime, how you put that together. Only if the only atheist I've heard with an objective ethic is T Jump.
Yeah. Yeah, I am familiar with T Jump. Here, let me bring this off here like this.
Are you an atheist with an objective ethic?
I actually, technically, I refer to myself as an agnostic. I really don't like the labels because once you adopt the label, you kind of paint yourself into a corner. So I'm agnostic about God claims I take seriously, which would be the gods of philosophy, like maybe a prime mover or something like that. I take the classical agnostic position that I don't think it's possible to know about anything supernatural, such as gods or miracles or things of that nature. I literally just don't think it's possible to know. So I remain agnostic. When it comes to formal or like organized religion, you could refer to me even as a hard atheist would be fair. You know, some people refer to me as a secular Buddhist or an agnostic Buddhist. So the labels are really weird, but I do take a secular position on morality, and that's a conversation I'd love to have with you or anybody else. I talk about that a lot on my channel. And there's actually a video that I did in defense of objective morality. If you want to check that out, I'd encourage you to look into it. If you ever want to come back by, I'm always willing to talk about that. I've got another, I had a PhD scholar, Richard Carrier, on the channel a couple weeks ago. He's actually in favor of objective morality as well from the atheist position. You might check that video out. And I have another PhD scholar in the books to come up at the end of June, we're going to have a conversation about objective morality. So there's a lot of scholarship behind that position from the atheist or secular position. The majority of scholars or philosophers the significant majority are atheists, and the majority of those scholars are moral realists. So
are you talking about an objective as in other words, it's first agreed upon and made into an objective, or it's actually present somewhere in the physical world and it applies to all humans that live?
I refer to it as you could consider it like maybe a metaphysical, because it's based on, I ground it.
You don't believe in the supernatural, but you believe in the metaphysical.
Yeah, I could also label as a metaphysical naturalist. So I believe that mathematics and laws of logic are metaphysical.
Where do you get metaphysics and naturalism?
That's a whole nother conversation.
It's not a conversation. It's a smuggle into a conversation. It doesn't exist in naturalism.
Oh, there is actually certainly a philosophical position for that, but
yeah, I'm saying the point is that from a naturalist position, you can't just bring in metaphysics without explanation, and I'm saying that explanation is going to fall short.
Fair enough. We could have that conversation, brother, but this isn't the time to do it. But I welcome you to come back, and I'd be happy to talk about objective morality from a secular position. It's something I feel very. I do a lot of conversations about that. I have formal debates about it in defense of it. So yeah, I'd love to have that conversation with you another time.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us today. You have a good day, brother.
Thanks, you too, man. Take care.
Okay, so I apologize about that, but it was always nice to meet somebody new. So Chris, I think we're at you. I'm losing track here. So why don't you go ahead and have the floor and give your closing thoughts.
Okay. Like I basically said what I have said, that essentially anarchic MAID policy is very problematic, as in once you open that that can of worms, it kind of permeates into a very vague and gray area of ethics and morality. And at the same time, but the most prolific thing, at least when it comes to America, is that most of the social issues, such as basically bodily autonomy for women and access to abortions and stuff like that, and also universal health care, and etc. Those issues, social issues, and economic and social, are at the crux of why basically like the quality of life, if those were improved, you would have basically have a better quality of life and better outcome of life too, and with sexual education at the same time and all that stuff. Sorry, I'm not gonna drone on about that, but it's just what I'm saying is that there are the social issues that have been reversed and also made taboo in American society ahead of the rest of the developed world, are essentially like those that you need to fix more into as an attainable objective than just saying, okay, let's have basically a MAID program, basically just because. Anyhow, I know that it's conflictive, but that's all I had to say. Thank you, Ethics, for displaying the MAID's policies in Canada. Just wanted to let you say that. And other than that, I'll catch you on the next one, guys.
Thank you so much, as always, for stopping by. And thank you, Pastor D, for the kind words in the comment. We do try really hard to keep things organized. It can get heated sometimes, but ultimately, if things run smoothly, it's because you all are very gracious and willing to have a polite conversation. Now, LA, I saw you posted a comment there. Did you need to go next to get out of here? Or do you want to keep working away around the room here?
Yeah, I would. If you don't mind, I'll just say my closing and then.
Not at all. Not at all. Let me give you the floor, brother.
I think consent is the basis for any legitimate authority. We do not consent to being brought into existence. We do not consent to the state. There is no basis for the state's authority to criminalize medical assistance in dying. The non-identity problem goes both ways. You can say that a person can't be harmed by being brought into existence, but they also can't benefit from being brought into existence. So any motivation for procreation wouldn't necessarily have to be selfish. It would only benefit those who currently exist. It does not benefit the person who is brought into existence. Now, I can't stop people from procreating, but for those who currently exist and don't want to, they should have the right to no longer exist without any regulation from the state. Any regulations from the state are illegitimate. There is no constitutional authority to regulate it. The state has limited authority. The purpose of the state is to protect your natural rights, not to enslave you. So unless somebody can point to a specific constitutional provision which authorizes the state to force you to exist against your will, then the whole conversation about whether it should be regulated or deregulated is completely resolved. I've looked in the Constitution, all these appeal to necessity to say, okay, what about the vulnerable? What about this? What about that? That's fine, but it still does not create authority just because there's a necessity for it. The state has limited authority, and the way that you guys are trying to deify the state, I'm sorry, I should be saying you guys, but the way the conversation has revolved around the state having unlimited authority, it's very dangerous. I do not consent to the state. And if you think that my life serves your purpose or it benefits the state, then you should have to pay for it. And I'm sorry to say you, but I'm speaking to those who don't support my right to opt out. I did not harm you. You are harming me by forcing me to exist against my will. Anybody who supports it, who supports criminalizing my right to medical assistance, is inflicting violence against me, and you're not innocent. You really need to evaluate your ethics. So I'm not trying to be accusatory, but I just think that you should really think about your role in somebody else's life. When you vote, it's not just you taking a personal preference. Your vote actually has a direct impact on somebody else's life. I am going to be trying to get legislation passed to decriminalize it, and that there will be a public debate on that. But this is the reason why I'm doing this live stream, because I'm trying to push my worldview and get people's responses, and then I can take it to a larger stage. But I think the arguments against medical assistance in dying are not compelling. So if you can have unregulated access to procreation, then I should have an unregulated right to terminate my involuntary existence. So with that being said, I do thank Objective Ethics for hosting this discussion, and hopefully there will be more discussions about this in the future.
It would be a great pleasure and a great honor to have you join us again, LA. And before you go really quickly, let me just thank you personally for taking time out of your busy schedule to come onto my small channel and to offer your position on this subject. It's a really touchy subject, and a lot of people are it's taboo in a lot of circles. And I think you're very brave for speaking up about this. And I know that it's a very polarizing topic. So I'm really grateful for you for being respectful to my guests. I know you got a lot of pushback in some ways, and you handle it like a champ. Like I've seen you every time. You're a very gracious interlocutor, and you're welcome here anytime, brother.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next around the room, I think we're now at Nell. Nell, I'm so glad you joined us today. Now that I know who you are and remember you, yeah, it's really nice to be able to talk to you again, and I'm really glad that you joined us. So why don't you have the stage? I want everybody to see this amazing picture. That is so fucking cool. All right, family, you've got the stage.
Thank you. And I just wanted to come to your defense, though, from that one person who came in at the end, and just say that, naturalism itself is a metaphysical position. Like denying metaphysics is a metaphysical position. So just throwing that out there. But when it comes to this topic, like I'm in agreement with LA, assisted, suicide, or however you want to, word it, it should be legal. And the real disagreement seems to be the implementation. And, I'm not exactly sure the best way to implement it. He seems to have a real hang up with the state implementing it. I'm not sure if he would have an issue if like something where MAID, stated that, instead of just grievous and, irreversible medical condition, I wonder if he would be for it if it just said that, anyway, as long as you're in, a right state of mind or competent, that you can, go through the program and end your own, existence if you want. Or if it's, or if it's so principled that he'd be against it, even if the state, was the one to do it. Because to me, the important thing is just having the choice to do it. And I'm not so hung up on, which entity is allowing that choice to happen. And so that's all I have to say on the matter.
Well, I really appreciate your input in both areas, and I didn't want to derail the conversation. So I really hope that the gentleman J.E. or J.G., I can't remember now, didn't feel like I was being dismissive. I really like the pushback, actually. I encourage that on this channel. That's one of the reasons I started this channel, was to create a platform where we could express our ideas and get the pushback in a respectful way so that we could figure out where the truth lies, right? We can't, if we're not thinking critically and if we're not willing to listen to objections, we can't really examine our own beliefs, right? And so I really, you guys, not you specifically here, but this community and other people pushing back on my views on objective morality has forced me to really dig into the philosophy and refine my argument. So where I feel like I'm standing on really solid ground and I'm capable of defending that position, whereas before it was grounded more in a belief and an intuition. So that pushback is really important. And you're absolutely right that there is a metaphysical naturalism. There is a philosophical grounding for that. And I'm not saying that objective morality is grounded in metaphysics, but I was just trying to give a very short, quick example of it's not like floating around in the ether somewhere necessarily. but I couldn't
Oh,
get
yeah.
into it. I just couldn't get into the objective moral argument on top of what we're talking about today. It's so great to have you here today. Love the picture. Thank you, sister, for coming by. And you, anytime you want, you're always welcome here. Okay. I just want you to know that.
I appreciate it. You all have a good night.
All right, let's go to B.S. Lewis. You're going to have the floor next, and just want to say before I give you the exclusive floor, how much I appreciate having you here. As you probably heard me say many times, I say a lot of nice things about you because I actually have a great deal of respect for you as a human being, and I know that you're well respected in the community, the quote unquote community, whatever the fuck that means. But in the circles that we run in, that I see you in, I know everybody says such good things about you. You're very creative. I love your channel, and I will be sure to get a link to your channel in the description of this video. So go ahead and take the floor, brother.
I appreciate it. You don't have to shower me with praise every time I see you, though. It gets a little embarrassing.
Why I do it, actually. No.
I want to say that on the meta, I fully agree with LA's position. Like my view for how I'm going to go out is I get some chronic disease. I can have my own celebration of life, quote unquote, funeral on my own terms where everybody can celebrate me while I'm there. And then I mosey off into the sunset as I go to Canada where they actually allow this stuff to happen, you know, with the closest of close people coming with me, like my wife and my kids, if they want. So ideally, like, yes, there's so much to say. Like, I do agree with the euthanasia perspective. It's when we want to sit there and start making public policies out of this is when it becomes such a problem. Because I think I tried to demonstrate, and I wasn't trying to like push back on LA as if he's wrong in what he's saying. I think he's wrong in aspects of what he's saying because he is trying to make it a public policy kind of position where we're going to run into a lot of problems. Namely is the competency test for mental illness, as I see it, and then issues like parenthood as it relates to forced pregnancies, quote unquote, the grape word. We're going to run into some objective issues in those instances. There's probably other ones if I sat here and thought about it. But the fact that you have had this conversation, and you've brought LA, who is a proponent of a rather radical position seen by the most of society, I think is a good thing. Do I think we'll ever actually achieve a public policy on such things? No. I think we can look to countries like Canada and places in Europe where they've implemented certain guidelines. But even if those guidelines are put into place, there's always going to be these weird one-offs where it's like, well, what about this situation? What about this situation? You know? So, and that'll make it very difficult to say, well, this is an objectively moral position to hold or whatnot. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts on the I wouldn't say problem, but the topic at hand today.
Thank you very much for coming by. And you do get credit for the first poll that's ever been launched on this channel. I don't know if that poll is still up because it never actually showed it. Did I see that poll? Where did that poll ever end up? Is it still on here somewhere?
It's on your YouTube. It's not on your StreamYard.
I think, am I looking at, this one I'm looking at. Where does it tell me what the poll is? I think we were at 100% talking about how brilliant I am, which is great. I love that the audience. I got a really smart audience here. I don't know. I can't see where the poll ended up at this point. Is it still at 100%? Can anybody tell me? I don't know how to even look at this. So obviously, I'm not as brilliant as I thought I was there. All right, that's good stuff. I'll have to like watch a fucking tutorial or something and learn how to do that whole poll thing. But that was pretty exciting stuff. All right.
I just learned StreamYard polls just recently, and I've been going ham on them. So.
I didn't know you could do it on Streamer. I did that on YouTube. I don't even know.
It's widgets. You got to look at the widgets on your side panel, and then it'll give you an option. They come out a little bit on the corner. Like it's hard to read on the screen, and so it's not as cool as the YouTube ones, but they're a lot easier to get to than having to change windows and stuff like that. So.
Okay. Describe option. I shouldn't mess with this on this right now. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to even do this. Okay, I see it. Look what you got me doing here. All right, brother. I will look into that. Actually, good call. I'll have to mess with that a little bit. All right, Robin. Enough fun and games here, sister. Why don't you get us back into the serious conversation we're having? This is your chance to have the floor. Any final thoughts? Tell everybody about your channel. Obviously, there's going to be a link to the channel in the description of the video. And if you want to talk about what you're doing with Pangburn, if it's too early to talk about that, I don't know, but whatever you want to say.
Oh, thank you, OE, and thank you for this conversation, and thank you for everybody who was here, who was respectful and stuff in chat and everything, because, you know, this is kind of topic that might draw in some non-helpful people. But, and I appreciate it. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of important conversations going on here today. And so it's good to see that everybody is kind of willing to start discussing this kind of stuff, because there's a lot of people that are not willing to even have these conversations. And all I can say is that Travis Pangburn has put me in charge of the fundraising for a school in Uganda. We haven't actually made out any kind of plan yet, so there'll be plenty more information coming. And so it's a big kind of responsibility for me, I feel like, but I'm hoping that I won't let him down. And thank you, OE, for everything you do. You always have a interesting and like topic to discuss. So much love, y'all.
Absolutely, sister. I don't know if you noticed, I did get a new poll started here. So it's, did you enjoy the show? Option number 1 is yes. Option number 2 is, of course, Robin was here. So please do vote on that. I don't even know if I can vote in my own polls, but I'm going to give it, I'm going to go with number 2. Of course, we enjoyed the show because Robin was here. Thank you so much. Okay, let me see. I don't know how to get rid of that poll now. We'll just leave it up there. At any rate, I do really want to just thank everybody, as always, for stopping by and supporting the channel. This is not really my channel. I only organize it, but you guys really make it happen. And so as I showed at the beginning of this video, some of the things that we talk about here, things I believe in very much, very strongly about how to live a good life. Other people are doing videos on that. Now, I get clipped in some really shitty ways. People make videos criticizing me as a human being and trying to trash me and say all kinds of things. And you know what? People can say whatever the fuck they want. I don't even watch those videos. I only know it happens because people contact me and say, hey, have you heard about so-and-so? And what is so-and-so doing? And, you know, you guys are all free to, it's a free country. And, you know, love it or not, you guys are my brothers and sisters, even though we may have some disagreements. But I do really like it. I like to see when people are actually promoting the stuff we talk about here, which is how to live a good life. And I want to close this show by talking about the fact that you can live a good life. I do believe that choice is extremely important, because autonomy is one of the key foundations of objective morality, right? And it's also one of the key foundations of living a good life. You need your freedom and well-being, and that requires your autonomy. So respect for the planet, respect for other people, and self-respect, those are the bricks that we build the road with that leads to the good life we want to live, right? That's what I say here all the time. So you can live a good life. There's a video that I did, which I need to link to this description of this video, but if you guys will do me a favor and go check it out on your own, it's called Courage Without Fear. It's extremely important. Next to this video, maybe, that's probably the most important thing that I'll do on YouTube is that video. It's only about 23 minutes long, and it's my response to the antinatalist question, is this life worth living? And I believe the experience is worth it. I believe that the ability to attain courage and humility and wisdom is actually worth the struggle it takes to attain those virtues. And you can only attain those virtues if you put in the work. Nothing gets handed to you for free in this world. We don't have any inherent duties. We don't have any inherent rights. We have reasons to behave in a particular manner, and it's ultimately going to be to our own benefit, right? There is mutual respect, but that's actually what allows you to live the good life that you want to live. So with that, I think I just want to thank our guest, life abolitionist, Jay Charles, the author of the book, Whose Life Is It Anyway? The Moral Debt for Life Enslavement. Check out the description of this video for links on how to purchase that book. And I will add links to panel members, people who I saw pop up in the chat, to the description of the video. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have to add. I don't think that there is, so I'm going to do this. Speaking of people who are supporting the channel, the graphics that I'm about to play were donated by GeoSam. I really, really appreciate that he would take the time to do that. I didn't ask for anything, and I just opened my email last week, and GeoSam had reached out to me and created this little outro thing. So the channel is looking a little bit better. The music that I play at the outro, that was donated by Deconverted Man. So just really appreciate all the support from the community. It touches my heart to see my videos being played on other channels, to have people email me these graphics and images and songs and stuff. And I'm very grateful to all of you.
Channel. 3.30 for repeating, of course. That's better than I've done before. And Deacon Brendan, what do you do? Wait, objective ethics will be on your plate.